Hi, everybody, and welcome to the workshop. My name is Vivek Patel from Meaningful Ideas and Gentle Parents Unite, and happy to be part of the No Spank Challenge. And it's really meaningful to me because, of course, caring for children's rights is something that's so passionate for me, something that's so important to me, and I care a lot about young people. I know you do too, and that's why you're here, and that's why you're part of this, and that's so important. You know, young people are they experience a lot of struggle and a lot of pain in their lives, and we are a lot of the time we're the cause of it. But I mean, that's the case in so many situations where you have people who are in the more, like, have more power in a situation. If they're not really careful with how they treat the people who have less power in a situation, they are, it's hard to do that with integrity. It's hard to do that with, real care. I know for me, when I was a kid, almost all the adults in my life treated me so harshly, condescending, control, like they knew what was better for me. And even when I was a kid, I knew that there was something wrong with this, Something inside of me was like, this is not how we're supposed to treat each other. And especially when I was being spanked. So when I was a kid, I was spanked and punished a lot. It was part of my daily life. I can remember this time when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I was over my dad's knee. And I can still remember exactly where we were. I can see it in my mind. We were on the landing on the way downstairs. And I was over his knee. And he had pulled my pants down. By the way, this whole talk is not going to be so... I'm not going to talk about spanking a lot in this talk, just so you know. But I want to share my story a little bit. That when he was over my knee, and I was getting spanked, And I remember I had this moment when I had this kind of almost like an out-of-body experience. And I saw the scene floating from above. And I had these chills go through me. I was like, I could see the indignity. I could see the dehumanization that was happening in that moment. And I said to myself, I said, my dad always used to make that joke. It's funny, I would use my dad's joke as I'm talking about him. Psychology. But anyways, he said, I remember thinking to myself, one day I'm going to be a dad and I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to do it differently. And I was so determined that was going to be the case. And yet, when my kid came along, 1997, this young, brilliant being is going to be 25 in less than a month. We're all going, oh my gosh, 25 is coming. When they came along in 1997, all of a sudden, there was this being there for me to care for, and that commitment of wanting to do things differently came back to me. And yet, my nervous system was wired with all this trauma from my childhood and from different things that had happened to me through my life, and so it was such a struggle to actually implement the kind of peaceful treatment I wanted to do with this kid, And even now, when I look back at videos of myself from when she was like 5 or 6, because we have videos from that time, I cringe at how I was interacting with her, even though I was putting all of my effort into being peaceful, collaborative, and gentle, and accepting, and all that kind of stuff. I still cringe because, now I'm 53. She's going to be 25 soon. We've had a couple of decades to practice, right? And but in those days, I had so much unprocessed residue in my system, And if I had had more tools in those days, even a few more tools in those days, to be able to work with the emotions that I had when they came up, when things really triggered me, when I had an emotional experience with an adult or someone else, and even to look at my the old residue in my system, if I had even a few tools of that sort, it would have made such a difference in my life, And so, like, it would have been like more. I was looking for a mind shift, Without those tools, it can be like a mind F, But when we can have tools, we can help ourselves shift our patterns, shift our reactions. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like a switch that turns on, but it's something that we can accomplish with work and with repeated practice. So that's one of the reasons that I really want to share with you some ideas and some strategies and some concepts and some actual practices that you can do to really help you in your day-to-day experience with your kids. So that when your emotions get activated, when things get chaotic, when kids aren't listening, when things are really challenging, You can hear my family laughing in the other room. When they're really challenging, you won't. You as you practice these things, you'll react less and less. You'll be able to respond more and more. And there's a big difference between reacting and responding. I was talking to my friend Pam Leo, who's a brilliant parent educator, and she's the one who came up with the line, "Let's raise children that don't need to recover from their childhoods." And that's me. I'm 53. I'm still recovering from my childhood. And actually, a little later on, I'm going to tell a story about this time this intense memory came back to me, full of all this fear and shame, and how I did some of the work to process it, and the stuff that I'm going to share with you. And these days, life is so hard. Life is always hard, for many of us. But these days with COVID and all the stuff happening politically in the world and everything, it's hard, and so like our own experience, harder than normal, our own experience has leveled up, and so the tension has leveled up, the stress has leveled up. And so it's really useful for us, first of all, to really acknowledge that. This is one of the things, to acknowledge the impact of how hard life is. And how hard life... Oh, sorry. By the way, if I'm grunting and groaning at any point, it's because I hurt my back a couple of days ago, and I'm in a lot of pain, even as I sit here and talk to you. So I might be changing positions from time to time just to ease my back. So thank you for being patient with that. So acknowledging how hard life is, even before COVID, this was important, but since then, and for me, since 2016, things have been a lot harder for me. And so when we acknowledge the impact, we can really be much more compassionate to ourselves. We can really care about our own mental health and our own struggles, because a lot of the time we put that stuff aside. We don't think we deserve it. We don't think from childhood we get this imprinted. Like, I have to work so hard to believe I deserve any kindness to myself. I have so many patterns wired into my mind. Like, I was doing the meditate part of this event. I was doing a meditation yesterday. I did and for those that came, thank you very much. We had a wonderful meditation. It was a body love and gratitude meditation where we tuned in and gave each part of our body love and gratitude. And it's such a beautiful thing. And then as I was doing the meditation, every time I would skip a word or mess up a word or hesitate on a sentence, immediately my mind would go, "Oh my God, they're all going to see that you're terrible and that you're messing up and you're a mistake, and they're all going to want to leave." Like, I was watching my mind do this in real time. I even mentioned it in real time. It's one of the things to do is mention it in real time can really be helpful, because it's very vulnerable and people relate. It's very helpful. So I said, "You know what I'm noticing right now?" And I said that. And it was helpful for me too, because I was able to kind of let it go a little bit more. But I have all these things wired into my brain. You probably have things like that wired into your brain too. Into your, not only the brain, right? The nervous system, into our muscle memory. It's all sorts of things, right? Our neuron system. And so, and also, everything that happens to us throughout the day leaves a residue. So challenges with our kids or our partner or at work or whatever. Every time that happens, it leaves a residue, And one of the things that I work with really hard in my own life and in my life with the parents that I work with is, by the way, I am also a parent coach as well as teaching workshops and stuff. I'm a parent coach and I have a membership space. And one of the things that we work a lot on is what I call residue reduction. And residue reduction is where when we ignore our feelings and our experiences throughout the day, it builds residue, builds and builds and builds, layers and layers, until we explode. And residue reduction is where we care for that. We don't let that build up, or we can't say don't let it. It happens anyways. But as much as we can, we pay conscious attention to it, so that it doesn't build up as much as if we didn't pay conscious attention to it. That's more accurate. And then, and then we have more capacity to be calm. Then we have more capacity to feel our hearts, more capacity to have compassion and patience with our kids. And I'm going to talk at the very end. I'm going to talk about how all the stuff I share kind of manifests in how we can work with our kids more effectively. But really, I want to focus on you. The last few workshops I've done, the meditation and the last 2 workshops I did before that, all of them were all about the parents. It wasn't about how to talk to the kids, I have hundreds of articles and hundreds of videos I've made about how to work with kids specifically. But recently, I've really been going into helping the parents manage their own stuff, having micro practices, recovering from mistakes with compassion, and all that kind of stuff. So today, this is about working with our emotions. Emotions are multidimensional, right? They are not just a feeling, but they are also physical. There's a physical manifestation of our emotions in our nervous system, in our and in our brains. The brain is a physical thing. Our breath changes, our tension, and also chemically, there's chemicals that go into our body from different emotions, and those chemicals also leave a residue. So there's a real physical component to our emotional experience that we often ignore. And repressing an emotion, expressing an emotion, unconscious, all the stuff, every way we work with it has some kind of physical component. So we're going to talk quite a bit about different things you can do with the physical aspect of your being, of your system, that can help release those emotions so they don't build the residue. And it's not that we're repressing, right? Repressing also is still residue. I don't want to repress. But the reason I want to work through it is so I don't project it onto my kids, right? That's why we work so hard at our conscious parenting, peaceful parenting, gentle parenting, responsive parenting. The reason we work, I say them all because we're all kind of working on the same thing. And there's different names, but each person has their own brand of it. I certainly have my own brand. I call it non-coercive collaborative parenting myself, and it comes from the non-coercive collaborative mindset, which I call NCCM. And it's really about being collaborative with your kids and all that stuff. But as long as we have these reactions and we don't have, and we haven't we aren't working with them. I don't want to say control. I was going to say as long as we don't control them, but it's not really about control so much as being in having a working relationship with them, And so one of my sayings is no repression, no projection. I don't want to repress and I don't want to project, right? So that's really important. So there's the physical aspect. There's also the mental aspect. So then that's the thoughts that I was saying that we have. With the scripts that play out. I notice very clearly when I'm acting from a script. I'm going to talk about scripts a little later. And when I notice I'm operating from a script, I try and interrupt that script. And so, but there's also our opinions about things and our perceptions and the paradigm that we look at things through. Like all of these things are very much kind of the intellect, mental side of things, the opinions that we have. And so, that's why I put a lot of thought into the philosophy itself and into understanding how relationships work, how learning works, how emotions work, how the mind works. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I don't have a PhD. I'm just me. But I've also who's been practicing and studying for like 30 years, this stuff. I know my kid's going to be 25, but when as early as in my early 20s, I knew that I had some rewiring to do if I wanted to be the kind of person that I wanted to be. Not the kind of person that was imposed on me. And this is the thing. Like I know so many of my thoughts, feelings, and emotions, perceptions, and opinions were imposed on me in my formative years. And it's so important for me. This is why I say, are your values chose or imposed? Are your thoughts chose or imposed? Are your opinions and your perceptions and your values, are they chose? I think I said values already, chose or imposed? And I ask that chose or imposed question a lot. And I encourage you to ask that. When you have a thought, kids need to have this. Like, for example, kids need to talk with respect. That's a common one we see all over the place. Was that idea chose? Did you really think it through? Did you really consider all the different aspects? Or was it imposed and you just kind of come out with it because that's obvious? If your answer is it's obvious, there's a good chance that it's imposed, right? So just think any opinion you have and think, why do I believe that? This is part of being a conscious, relating to yourself consciously, being a conscious person, is asking questions like that about ourselves. For many years, I went through life believing what I believed without ever questioning it, even asking myself, why do I believe what I believe? Why do you believe what you believe? Right? That's such a powerful question, and it's not hard to go into a comment space in Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever and see a lot of people who've never asked themselves that question. And certainly, even when I look at my comments or my writing from a year ago, I can see how much more I've evolved by asking myself that question for a whole year. I'm much more compassionate and much more empathetic, and I hope that when I look back on myself from a year, when I'm even watching this video a year from now, I'll go, oh, Vivek, you had all the wrongness and all this shame was coming out of you, you know, and you've evolved so much. Let me say this to my future self if I watch this in a year. Sometimes what I do is I'll actually put a reminder in my phone to come back and read something or watch something a year from now so that I'll see the change. So I'm going to say this to myself, Vivek, when you watch this from a year from now, notice how much you've changed and celebrate that, but also honor the you that you are now because you're doing your best. Okay. So there's the mental, all the thoughts and perceptions. Then there's the actual feelings, of course, that we have, the emotional feelings that we have, you know, and it's different. It's hard to speak about feelings because they're kind of ephemeral and amorphous and like kind of like, it's not like like my thoughts. I can say, I think this about myself, but feelings, they're a little bit mushier, which is one of the reasons it helps us to have tools and really practice, because the practice is beyond words, right? It includes words, but it's also beyond words. So then you have physical, mental, the emotional. Then you have also relational. So there's a relational impact that our emotions have. And relationships affect our emotions very deeply, you know. And so processing our emotions relationally helps too. And then, of course, for those that are into it, there's the spiritual side. And I say for those that are into it because none of this philosophy is any kind of spirituality is required, because this is about human relationships. But consciousness, you know, or you can call it consciousness, because we have consciousness, and our consciousness and our deep consciousness, it's something powerful, and you know has an effect on our relationship to ourselves, how we think of ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, has a deep impact on how we work with our emotions. And so emotions also have a lot of complex causes, you know. It's not just on the surface a lot of the time. You know, for example, there's an analogy for the residue reduction that I was talking about earlier. There's an analogy I love, and you can find this on YouTube very easily. Just go to YouTube and type in elastic band watermelon. And what you'll find is What you'll find is videos of people taking a full-size watermelon and putting an elastic band on it. Of course, one elastic band, nothing happens. Then you put another and another and another, and then you put 100 and 200 and 300-400 elastic bands like this thick, right? And then one more elastic band. The watermelon explodes, right? The exploding watermelon from all the pressure building up. But prior to that, if you didn't see the elastic band, and you only saw the water, let's say the elastic bands are down here, it's kind of iceberg, right? Like the elastic bands are down here, and all you see is the watermelon, and then suddenly the watermelon explodes with no warning. You think, oh, it's disproportionate. It's with no, like people often say, my kid had a sudden tantrum or meltdown for no reason. And I say, it's not no reason, my friend. It's the watermelon. It's the elastic bands. And so residue reduction, I also call elastic band management. And so we're going to talk about elastic band management today too. But I usually don't say elastic band management. If you don't know the analogy, it makes no sense. So now I'm trying to say residue reduction, which is kind of the same thing. But I love the visual of that. So check those videos out on YouTube. So then our emotions, when our emotions come up with our kids, when we're triggered by them, when we're activated by them, when our nervous system goes into, you know, some kind of activated state, and we lose consciousness and we lose our sense of choice, and we act out of alignment with our values and with how we want to be. When that happens, it comes from many different things. And this is one of the things it's also important to recognize how complex the causes are for that. So like, first of all, childhood trauma is a big one, you know, and that stuff gets wired into our nervous system. And yes, of course we can work through it and find peace with that. But even as we do, it's always going to be part of us. And as we clear out, it becomes less part of us. But still, it's worth recognizing that has a big impact. Another is also how you were treated as children. Maybe not how we normally think of as trauma, but how you were treated around mistakes, whether you had conditional acceptance from your parents, consequences, punishment, rewards, or, like I recently posted about the disappointed look. Disappointed look is conditional acceptance. Because if your kid does something you don't like and you give them a disappointed look, it means you like them better when they feel, you probably don't feel this, but they feel, you like them better when they act in accordance to your expectations, and worse when they don't. So I certainly, it's a loud water bottle. Maybe I'll leave it maybe I'll just leave it open, and then I can just grab it when I want it. It'll be less loud. All right, so how you were treated around mistakes and conditional acceptance as a kid, it affects your self-worth. It affects how you feel about yourself. It affects how you think about yourself, and it also can activate fear responses and all this stuff in us. And many of us are wired differently, even from birth. You often hear of like twins that come out, and so much about them is similar, but their personalities can be so different in so many ways. Many of us are wired differently, and we process emotions differently. Separate from just how we're wired, separate from, maybe you can never separate it from our life experiences. You probably can never separate it. But also in addition to, and then things like our comparative experiences, like at school, like grades and social structure at school can really impact us. And teachers, the way teachers treat us can really impact us and leave a deep residue that comes out as adults. And so there's a whole lot of stuff that happens in our childhood and youth that affects our emotional experience as adults. How comfortable we are with emotions, how much they take us over, do we repress, do we overly project onto our kids, whatever. But then there's also the stuff that happens to us as adults. It's not only childhood stuff. Something that happened to me yesterday could affect me today, right? Because we're human. Our adult relationships at work, our friends, our romantic relationships, our partners, people that maybe we're doing creative projects with, whatever it is, you have conflict with them. Somebody says something that hurts your feelings. Maybe an adult says something that hurts the child part of you. And oh, my back. Sorry. Let me just change positions for a sec. Oh God. I don't want to ignore it because then suddenly I'll be in pain and I'll have to lay down. I don't want to lay down. It sucks that I hurt my back right before this workshop. Anyway. So there's so many adult relationships that affect our emotions too. And then, if you have any kind of marginalization, part of a marginalization demographic, if you're a person of color, my family's from India, if you're a person of color, black, indigenous, or a person of color, if you're LGBTQ or non-binary or gender fluid in some way, if you're disabled or neurodivergent in some way, if there's any kind of economically marginalized, geographically marginalized, however you're marginalized, every one of those things, that extra layer of weight and oppression adds to our emotional experience. And of course, good things affect our emotion too, like we have good friendships and someone says something kind to you. I saw a post today from a friend who posted about how they went to the gym and somebody flirted with them. And at first I thought it was going to be this like post about how the guy was rude to them, whatever, but actually it wasn't that. It was like a really nice interaction. She said, I'm married, and they were like, fine. And just said it really lifted their spirits, So like we can have, and I know that experience. So sometimes we can have experiences that activate, positive emotions. I'm like going on the doom and gloom right now, but our emotional natures come from all sorts of different inputs, and sometimes we can get really emotional just from a memory that pops into our head. And that's quite something too. It's a little bit further on, but I'm going to share exactly that, what happened to me just a few days ago. And I made a video of it, kind of like in the group here, but I'm going to share it again. So multiple causes. So emotions are multidimensional and they come from multiple causes, right? It's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational, environmental, and then also from our childhood, from adult relationships, from our memories, from how we're wired. So many different inputs and things like that, right? And it's really challenging. And I know myself, I'm how can I say? I used to work at a radio station, volunteer at the university radio station back in like '87 when I was at McMaster University. And whenever we would look behind the console, there were so many wires and they were all twisted. And apparently like from the '70s, those wires had been put in there and nobody was afraid. Everyone was afraid to touch it except this one guy who was the tech guy who knew it. But we used to call it the rat's nest. And all those wires and plugs and everything. And I often think of my brain like that. I often think of my brain and my nervous system as that rat's nest, full of all these tangled knots and wires. Oh my God, I'm laughing, but it's funny, but also not funny. And it can be very, very stressful, you know? And life obstacles, you know, life obstacles can really be challenging. So I wanna help us find our way from this rat's nest to some more emotional wellness. You know, I did a workshop I think it was last year, with my friend, colleague, Hannah Laird, who also is my kid's partner and a very brilliant and wise person. And we did a whole 2-hour workshop on help supporting kids' emotional wellness. And of course, one of the key factors in supporting our kids' emotional wellness is supporting our emotional wellness. And that's really important. So I wanted to talk about 3 ingredients about emotional wellness that I think are something to kind of work towards, you know. This is not something that's ever... Oh, hang on. Ugh. Thank you for your patience. If anyone doesn't know, I hurt my back, and I'm just kind of like grunting and groaning as I do this. So there's 3 main components to emotional wellness that I want to talk about. Now, of course, I talked about the physical, mental, and all that, but emotional wellness, the 3 words I use are stable, sustainable, and resilient. And I want to talk about that for a moment. So stable is the strong foundation that we have. When we have when our relationship to our emotions and the emotional work that we do, and our self-image and all that kind of stuff, and even how we relate to our emotions, like our opinion of our emotions. Because some people think, certain emotions are good and certain emotions are bad, and we compartmentalize ourselves. But having a strong foundation where we accept all of our emotions, because any you push away, you can't work with, right? We accept them, we bring them in, we look at them, we work on them, and then understanding how they work. And I don't mean understanding as in you already understand. I mean continuously being on an evolving path of understanding. Because I learn and grow every day. I mean, yesterday I saw those scripts coming to me when I was doing the meditation. I learned something about myself, right? I teach every day. But if I wasn't on a learning path, what good a teacher would I be? I wouldn't be. You know, I'd be useless. But I'm always trying to learn about myself and deepen my own understanding and come closer to my own values and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, stability doesn't mean you never have hard times. Stability means that you have practices and you have a relationship with yourself that is kind of underneath all of that. So that there's the stability underneath, even as life has peaks and valleys, there's something stable underneath. Our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our deep consciousness, with stillness perhaps, with a sense that we're a fundamentally good people with going through challenging times, which is very different than thinking you're a bad person, you know. And so many of us get that message wired into us as kids, and it's really challenging. And we get a lot of shame wired into us, you know. And so, like, working that stuff out and being able to see ourselves as wonderful, beautiful, kind, loving, compassionate beings that are having a hard time living up to our values, and that's okay, and we're still working on it. Like, that's a beautiful foundation. It's not perfection, right? But it's a compassionate understanding of ourselves as being in process. So having a strong, stable foundation is important to emotional wellness. The next is sustainable. Sustainable is that it has the ability to last through the long haul, right? To go for a long time. Because our kids, you know, being parents, it's a 20-year journey, more, right? And so to be able to be consistently working on ourselves and working at being more compassionate to our kids and holding space for them, working on collaborating more and controlling less, which means working on our own emotional nature, like we want that to be sustainable over the long haul. And that's why emotional techniques... Oh, I put that bottle too far away from my back. Oh, put it here instead. And so we want to make sure that. Oh, that's what I was saying. Emotional techniques that rely on repression or judging of techniques, they're not sustainable because the residue keeps building up and it's not healthy for us, and we end up crashing, like the elastic bands on the watermelon. So sustainable is what helps us not explode like the watermelon, right? It requires a certain amount of resources, and I know most parents are highly under-resourced. I know how hard that is. It's very challenging. Society, the way it's built up, capitalism, the way it's expanded, and the monetary system, and just all the stuff that, and then in our own lives with our families, depending how that is, we have no support systems. It's hard to have the resources. And a lot of the time, the only resource that we have, and I work with a lot of parents who are in situations like this, the only real resources we have is ourselves and maybe like a little bit of something, So that makes it hard to be sustainable, right? So that's why that's one of the reasons I'm doing this workshop, is it gives some practical things that can really help us. Then also to be able to nourish ourselves is really important for sustainability, and to be able to recover. And the next one is resiliency, which connects to that. But be able to recover when something challenging happens is also part of sustainability. Resilience now. Resilience is be able to go back to the hard times and come back to our center, because hard times are always going to exist. Ups and downs, peaks and valleys are always going to exist. And that's why resiliency is important. But resiliency is not repression. That's one of my one-liners is speedy repression is not resilience. We often think if somebody bounces back quickly, they're resilient. Not necessarily. A lot of time it can be speedy repression. And with kids, a lot of the time, what we call resilience is actually them repressing their experience so that they can come back to the appearance of center, so they can receive acceptance from us again. And this is one of the reasons that working with kids, I know I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between parents and kids, but it's so related, right? This is one of the reasons with kids it's so important for us to hold space for their emotional nature and their emotional experience, so they don't practice repression. Because I'm an expert at it. One of my sayings is, I searched for my tears for years. I searched for my tears for years. I can cry now, but it took me years to be able to do that. And a lot of people I know can't cry. Most people raised as boys and men, and I say raised as, culturally and societally, have a lot of trouble with crying. And you can see that there's a whole demographic of people who post about being tough guys out there on the internet, and you can see me coming in with a little bit of emotional connection and softness. How I'm viewed. I remember I remember I went to a martial arts conference. I'm a martial artist, by the way. I've been doing martial arts for 35 years. I'm also a dancer. I've been dancing for like 17 years. And but I remember I went to this martial arts conference with one of my martial arts mentors, Luke Holloway. You should look up Luke Holloway. He's amazing. Australian guy. And I was at a 2-week conference with him. It was a wonderful experience, all expenses paid. There were a few people from each country, I think 2 people from different countries all around the world. And I was fortunate to be one of the people from Canada. And went to the UK and spent 2 weeks with people that were like in the Secret Service and military, and prison guards, and police officers, and security guards, and not security guards, bodyguards, and world champion like kickboxers and all this kind of stuff, and then me. These were all these guys were like serious tough guys, and right away I got the nickname the tie-dye ninja because my personality is different from that. I don't act tough, and I could tell right away that they were seeing me as weak because I was connected to my emotions, connected to my softer side. Back in the day, before I evolved in my understanding and relationship to gender identity, I used to say my feminine side. I don't say that anymore. Now I say my softer side, my gentler side, my more compassionate side. And so, but because of that, even then, like this was 2012, even then, yeah, 2012. Even then, in those days, I was still much softer, way softer now. But still, I had that reputation, and people were treating me with a lot of disrespect. So I knew right, right off the bat, I had to break a couple people's noses and hurt people pretty badly first. And they were like, "Oh, okay, this guy's awesome." But I mean, when you're in a room of martial artists, that's one of the ways to get to get respect. But I remember for that judgment, you know, and I remember at one point. Really, when I felt that acceptance shift, then all of a sudden everybody kind of joined together and there was like a deeper connection between all of us. It was beautiful. So resilience is not repression, right? It's about adapting. It's about processing. It's about endurance and perseverance, right? Being able to care for ourselves through hard times. It's about patience too, you know, being able to have patience with our own process. I have a mentor that I have been following, studying with, being guided by for the last 30 years, 29 and a half years. It's going to be 30 in February, named Tolshi-sen. And one of the main things that I have learned from him over the years is to study patience. Patience, again, we often think patience means repression, right? And people say, I'm not patient, because maybe they get activated easily. But you get activated easily for a good reason, because that stuff's wired into your nervous system. And learning to be patient is a process, you know? It's a process that we can actually engage in, and that's a beautiful thing. So a lot of the emotional processing we do is so that we can be more patient with our kids. So talking about residue reduction, why is it important? Part of the reason is because it leaks out onto our kids. This is one of the main reasons that we're all here doing this, right? It leaks out onto our kids, but it also leaks out onto other adults, you know, in our lives. I know my relationship has gone through a lot of stress over the years. I've been married for 28 and a half years, and 28 and a half years, yeah. And so we've gone through peaks and valleys too through all that time. It's almost 3 decades, right? And we met in 1990, so we've known each other for like 32 years. It's a long time. And my residue impacted our relationship so much over the years. And as I worked through the residue in my own system, our relationship continuously improved, you know, and this is something about being consciously working at that residue reduction, because it leaks out on adults in our lives. Same with people I worked with, same with my friends, same with my mom, who I'm very close to and who's watching. Hi, Mom. And so my mom, by the way, her name's Shivani Patel, and she is brilliant. She does self-empowerment workshops in prisons for the last decade and has transformed so many lives. And I really appreciate her. And I'm her assistant, and I go in and I do the workshops with her, and it's really very powerful. And then, of course, residue reduction, the residue leaks out on ourselves. That's one of the hardest parts of it, right? That's why even an inch of clearing out that residue has a profound effect on our lives, on our relationships with ourselves, on our relationships with our kids, on our relationships with the other adults in our lives. That residue reduction is so profound. So don't take it lightly. It's something that you can dig away. Why did I say an inch? Because it doesn't mean you have to go for, like, you finish hearing this workshop and all of a sudden you're healed. It doesn't work that way. I wish I could go boom and everybody's psychological rat's nest goes away, right? But no, that's not how it works. We're in it, right? It's a process, and we're learning and we're growing. So that's what it is. All right. So let's look at some different things that we can do with our emotions. What time is it? Let's see. It's 6:39. Okay, we're good. I think I might actually finish on time today. So here's a few different things that we can think about. One of them is, like I said before, is accepting all of our emotions. Now on my YouTube channel, changing position again. And water. You know, even when I'm doing a workshop and there's like a bunch of people listening to me, I still take the time to take care of myself, just enough. Because I'm important too. And that's part of the lesson, right? And so accepting all of our emotions. On my YouTube channel, which is Meaningful Ideas, which I would love for you to subscribe to and to watch all my videos. I'm almost at 100. I think it's like 96 or 97 now. And parenting videos. I have more videos, but the parenting videos. And but also in my membership group, I have like 200 videos. On my Facebook page, I've got like probably 50 videos on my Facebook page because I go live all the time. But on my YouTube channel, I have a video called "Accepting All of Our Emotions," and I would really encourage you to watch it because it talks about how when we accept our emotions, it really helps us accept our kids' emotions and hold space for them. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that because I want you to watch that video. But when we can really accept our emotions and not judge good emotions, bad emotions, there might be more effective and helpful expressions and less helpful expressions and more damaging expressions. But the emotions themselves are part of our humanity. Your humanity is not bad. It's not wrong. It's part of who you are. It's part of who we are. I quickly included myself. You see, I said you are, and I quickly included myself. It's part of who we are, you know? So, like, one of the main things for our own emotional journey is to accept our own emotions as valid. Your feelings are valid. Your emotions are valid. Your existence is valid. And you might have to say that to yourself every day to remind yourself, especially if you got the opposite message as a kid, you know? And so then this is why it's so important for us as parents to continuously make sure our kids know that they are valid, that their feelings are valid, their experiences are valid, their existence is valid, you know? And so then when we are able to accept our emotions, we're able to hold space for our own feelings as well. And right, holding space means not repressing, means giving ourselves space to experience them and feel them without shame, without judgment. It's such a powerful thing to be able to do for ourselves. And I do this all the time. You know, there are times where I feel like, just the other day, I was talking to somebody and they said something that hurt my feelings. Now, I knew they were having an emotional reaction to something. I knew it. I knew it wasn't really about me. I knew it intellectually. That's why I said there's the different levels, intellectual, feeling, thing. But my nervous system got impacted. And I'll tell you what I did. I immediately picked up my phone and I started scrolling. I'm scrolling and I'm on Facebook and I was just getting ready to argue with someone because that's one of the ways that my inner child feels validated, right? Is I start arguing, or maybe my inner teen. I start, and then just as I was about to press send on the comment, I was like, Vivek, you're avoiding your feelings. And you teach this stuff. Slow down, bro, slow down and give yourself a moment. So I stopped and I went, and I felt the anger and the embarrassment and the shame ripple through my system. I was like, oh my gosh, I was about to repress all of this. Oh no, and it was going to go into my nervous system. Oh no, and then it was going to leak out. Oh no. So then I breathed through it and I massaged and I did something, which I'm going to talk about. But I worked it, right? I worked it for maybe a minute. It didn't take a long time because it wasn't a huge thing. And I have some practice at this. So I took a minute, but that minute made such a difference, you know. And some of the practices I'm going to share are micro practices, and I actually have a micro practice workshop. It's one of the few things I have for sale. I put almost everything that I do is free, but I have a few things for sale. And my micro practices workshop. Saying my micro is hard. Say it 5 times fast. But micro practices don't even take a minute. It's just a breath, you know, really short. But taking that time to do some care, we reduce that residue. So one of the things is empathy, right? And Sarah just posted a comment saying that it's a really constructive workshop. Thank you very much. The micro practice is one. So one of the things is empathy. One of the prime ingredients of the work we do with kids is empathy. Empathy is not just the words we say, right? But it's a whole emotional relationship that we have with someone. It's holding space for their emotions. It's helping them feel safe to feel their emotions, and that sense of acceptance, so that there's no shame and judgment of it, and being able to sit with somebody through their emotions so that they feel us with them. I know there's the old, more limited definition of empathy is feeling the same thing someone else is feeling. But as we've gone through understanding more about emotional I shouldn't say we, as I've gone through more experiences of going through and learning about my emotions and learning about being able to connect emotionally with people to process together, empathy is one of the most powerful things. A lot of the time when I'm on coaching calls with parents, they'll say something like, oh, my kid yelled at me and it made me really upset and I yelled back at them and then I felt so guilty and I went into my room and I cried for an hour. And I'm like, wow, that sounds really hard. My goodness, it sounds like you were really upset at yourself. I mean, first you were completely activated by your kid, and that really sucks. And your whole nervous system went on fire. And then, of course, you fired back from that fire because it wasn't in your control anymore. It sucks. It really sucks to have that experience. And then because of how loving you are and because of how much you care, you were racked with guilt and shame. And also because the shame is pre-installed, but you were racked with guilt and shame. And you went into your bedroom and cried. Now, I know it sounds like I just repeated it, but honestly, that is such a validating thing to feel that someone really heard you and feels what you're feeling. I'm not lost in the same feeling, but I'm really feeling that, And so, like, when we turn that around and offer ourselves that empathy, I call it self-empathy, right? When we call it, when we turn that inwards, it's such a profound thing. Now, I've written a lot about empathy. I have a comprehensive guide to empathy on my Facebook page, and I have a few videos on empathy on my YouTube channel. So please check those out. But in general, offering ourselves real space for our feelings and empathizing is so important. So when I had that experience a couple of days ago, when I felt all that shame, I empathized. I was like, Vivek, that person, they said that to you and it really hurt. They didn't see you. They were blaming you. They were criticizing you, and that hurt your feelings. And you felt your childhood, the shame come up, and then all of this anger came up too. Of course you'd feel angry, my friend. Of course, it's natural. That's part of the human condition, And so that's really powerful. We can give ourselves that kind of empathy. So when we're giving ourselves empathy, I want to share a couple of ideas around it. One is that when we're hurt, a lot of the time, it's some inner child or inner youth thing wired into our nervous system that's coming up, that's being activated. So I actually want to give empathy to my inner child. And I will talk to little Vivek. I will say, and I'm going to go into an even more detailed example of this very soon, because I had a really intense one that I did the other day, which is the one that I shared on another video recently. But in this case, I was like, Vivek, like my inner child felt attacked. So I will talk to little Vivek. I'm like, little Vivek, you felt attacked just now. You were attacked just now. It was so hard. It felt so bad. I'm so sorry. You don't deserve that, honey. You are so sweet and you're so loving, and this was really hard for you. And you're feeling so sad, and you're even feeling angry. Of course, it's natural to feel angry. I always do the, of course, it's natural too. It's human too. I call it the affirming that it's natural, that you're not broken for having this feeling. I share a system of empathizing called EARS, EARS, use your ears, which is empathize, which is what I first was doing, reflecting the feelings, validating the feelings. And then affirm is really the validating, where you say it's natural, it's normal to feel that way. Because a lot of the time we feel we're broken to feel that way, Like I often have parents saying, I got angry at my kid, I'm broken, I'm awful, I'm a terrible parent. No, you're actually a human parent, And I think that's something that's important for us to realize. So affirming is so important, affirming that it's natural. So when I turn to little Vivek, I'm like, little Vivek, oh, that hurts so much. But of course it would hurt, honey. Of course, my darling. I'm talking to my little one, my little sweet little Vivek, so innocent. Can you remember little sweet you? You didn't deserve to be treated that way. No. You deserved kindness and love and compassion. And I'm sorry that you're hurting, and I'm here for you, And little Vivek responds, now that he believes me. It took a while for him to believe me, let me tell you. First of all, it took a little while for me for it to not feel awkward when I talk that way. But even more so, it took a while for little Vivek to believe it, because he didn't believe the adults or trust the adults in his life for the most part, because they weren't safe. And now suddenly this adult comes in saying he can be safe? No. But after a while of that's why it's hard at first. It may not land right away. But, sorry. But But if you keep practicing, eventually your little one starts to believe you and starts to relax. Now little Vivek is very ready to relax into my arms, and I hold him and I'll dance with him and I love him. You can do that too. I swear you can do that too. It takes a little bit of time, but you can do that too. And you don't want to jump into solutions right away, but I mean, you can see even when I'm doing, I throw in a little bit of thing. It's because you're such a loving person that you feel that way, like I'll do little things like that. But generally you don't want to get into solutions right away, or you don't want to get into practical mental solutions right away when you're feeling very emotional. People say don't get into solutions, but I actually think empathy is part of the solution. It is one of my old one-liners is empathy is fixing, because we say don't fix it for me, and empathize instead. But then I realized, well, empathy is actually part of the process of fixing. You want me to empathize because what I was doing wasn't helping. It's not that you're telling me not to fix. It's you're telling me that what I was doing to fix isn't working. It's different, because then you're asking me what you want from me, which is to empathize. Like I used to have people tell me all that all the time because I was such a fix-it. I was such a fixer. My friend Jenny Bruckner, who's a brilliant practitioner of like therapy and presence process and authentic movement and all this stuff. She's one of the ones that really got me with that. I would like go in immediately giving advice and suggestions. She's like, Vivek, that's not helping, and so I slowly learned to do that. But for a while, I felt a lot of shame too around that, because I thought, I'm doing something wrong by wanting to fix. But then I realized, wait a minute, no, what they're asking me for is a more effective fix, which is the emotional connection first, before you can process intellectually and come up with a practical solution. And so I hope the people who are fixers can remember that line, empathy is fixing. It's not a waste of time. It's not something you do to get the other person ready to hear your solutions. It is part of the solution. It's part of the process, because we are emotional beings, right? So empathizing with yourself is so important. The next part of empathizing is not just with the inner child. Now, the inner child can be 3, can be 10, can be 13, can be amorphous, kind of like all those things at once. Go inside and form relationships with those beings. Now, another part of empathy is empathizing with the adult self, with me right now, because it wasn't only the child self that felt that. When I got hurt a few days ago by that thing that friend said, like me in the present moment was hurt because I thought, well, maybe I can't trust that friend as much. Maybe I can't be as open with them. I have to really think about it. Or maybe I need to talk to them about it first before I can. But I was feeling like some lack of safety and some fear and things like that as an adult, not only the child. So then I had to also empathize with me, with me now, not only the inner kid. So we empathize with our child self and we empathize with our adult self. And I am telling you, and I'm going to say this over and over again, this is an interesting idea that has a lot less effectiveness if we don't practice it. When we start to practice it, it makes real changes in our lives. But the very thing that we're trying to work through is the thing that stops us from practicing it, our lack of self-worth. I'm not worthy of doing it. I'm too stressed, I'm too overwhelmed because life is so hard and I'm full of emotions and I'm full of overwhelm and whatever else in life. So those are the things that doing this work actually helps with, but those are the things that also stop us from doing it. I didn't build the system, but that's kind of how the system is, and if I had designed it, it might be a little different. But the fact is that so anyways, let me go on. So there's 2 other kinds of empathy I want to talk about. One is post-event empathy and the other is pre-event empathy. Pre-event and post-event. Post-event empathy is what we usually talk about, where something happens and then you empathize with yourself. And by the way, I have a lot of acronyms. I use a lot of acronyms. This is one that I'm specifically not using an acronym for because it would be PEE, which is P. And because it's post-event empathy and pre-event empathy, it's actually PP. So no acronym. You're not allowed to use an acronym for this one. Allowed. But, I'm kidding. So anyways, so post-event empathy is when the thing happens and then you empathize with yourself, like what happened to me. But pre-event empathy is when you have a good feeling that you're going to get some kind of harsh treatment in some way. And you empathize with yourself before. Like there's certain people that I know when I talk to them, I know I'm going to get activated because they've got their stuff and they're not really tuning into me very much. And a lot of the conversation is kind of one way or whatever it is, or they dump their stuff or they have opinions of me or they have some opinions that I don't like or whatever it is. I give myself empathy ahead of time. I'm like, okay, this person's going to say something that's going to activate you. You know that already, Vivek. So first of all, it's not about you, honey. I call myself honey and love a lot. It's not about you or dude sometimes. My kid used to call me dude all the time growing up. And I used to love it. And then one day she told me I stopped answering to it. And so she changed to dad. And then I started answering. I was a little surprised. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that happened. But I'm like, it's not about you. It's not your fault. And nothing's happened yet. This is before the phone call. For example, I had this one parent I was working with, and her and her kid, a 15-year-old, right, had a big argument. And this parent kind of struggles with the gentle parenting stuff, so they were yelling at each other and limits and stuff. And so the kid went up to their room, slammed the door, angry. So she called me and we talked it through, and she said, okay, I'm going to relax it. I'm going to go apologize. I want to say maybe we'll watch a movie together. Her favorite movie's on tonight. Maybe we'll watch it together. I said, that's a great idea. But there's a chance when you go into her room and you say, would you like to connect? I'm sorry for what happened. She's going to tell you to F off. And then what'll happen is you'll get activated because you'll feel rejected. And all of your rejection stuff will come up. And then you'll react back to her and you'll increase the disconnection when the whole reason you went up there was to create connection. So start by playing the whole scene out in your head and having her react harshly, and then empathize with yourself. It's not about you. It's okay. This person is working out their feelings in the best way they know how, and I'm here to support them. But I love you. You're okay. You're not under attack. You're not being rejected. We're all in process. You're a good person. Whatever it is, like really affirm yourself, And you can see I'm already touching myself all over because there's, we're going to get to the physical soon, but I did it just automatically, just telling the story. I'm including the physical, right? It's an important part. We're going to get to that next. Not next, but soon. So anyways, she went up to the room, opened the door. Would you like to watch the movie? I'm sorry for what happened. No, F off. The kid said F off. And she messaged me after and she said, Vivek, it didn't upset me at all. I was able to be so compassionate and open because I had spent a couple of minutes really giving myself a lot of empathy first. And it's so powerful, And then actually her kid was able to really seeing this different reaction from her parent. Later on, the kid came out and was able to be much more relaxed and open to the process because she didn't feel that immediate pushback, And recently I posted a thing about when kids roll their eyes to thank them and to let them know you appreciate them sharing that information with you. And people are often saying, well, then they'll just do it more. No, what happens is they learn that they don't have to roll their eyes to get the information across to you, to get the idea across to you, that they're not happy with what's happening. They can say, I don't like the way this conversation is going. I don't like the way you're talking to me. And a lot of the parents I work with, their kids are not afraid to share that. And they share it knowing the parent is going to respond because they're starting to build new patterns. Then the kids don't have to roll their eyes anymore. Right? This is a beautiful thing about changing those things. What time is it? An hour? I'm not going to be able to finish in 2 hours. Oh my God. Okay, let's keep going on. I'm not even a quarter of the way through. And I always have so much to say. Goodness me. Anyway, I'm going to keep going on. So post-event empathy and pre-event empathy, PP. No, we're not calling it that. Okay, so let's go on. So the next section I want to talk about, by the way, when I say section, when I do workshops and stuff like that, I always make like a lot of detailed notes because I want to make sure I'm not missing anything because I've been practicing. I always start with practicing because my practice is the foundation of everything I teach. I do not teach from stuff that I've read and hope is real or works. I teach from the stuff that I have experienced in my life, the stuff that I work with the hundreds of parents that I work with, and the thousands of families that have been trying the philosophy that I share. And it's really important for me, even just to remind myself. More really to remind myself that it's rooted in my practice. I say that I teach, but really what I do is I share my own process. That's really what's happening, And but also because I've been doing it a long time, I have so many details for how to implement it and all the different ways of thinking about it. And I want to make sure I don't miss anything, so I write out lots of notes. So the next one I want to talk about is something called blame your parents. Now, I know we don't really want to blame our parents. Maybe some people do, and I think it's not a bad thing. But I actually call it that to be somewhat humorous, but also the idea behind it is in an effort to, a lot of the time what people do is, in an effort to not blame their parents, they also don't look objectively at what happened to themselves as children, and they repress or deny or make different stories or make excuses. But that doesn't really help. It doesn't help us evolve past what our parents had to go through and what they, like my parents, both of them came to Canada in the 50s, right? As teenagers. They met here. One of the few Indian families in the city of Toronto, experiencing, racism and exclusion, and the hardship of being immigrants. And I was born in '68, and so like growing up in the '60s and '70s, life was challenging in many ways. A lot less information available, and just all sorts of stuff. And so what they gave us the best. They gave me the best that they could, but it doesn't mean that the best was effective. It doesn't mean that there wasn't things to learn and improve and grow and evolve. And a lot of us block ourselves from evolving because we don't want to evaluate, because we don't want to blame. So I say, let's blame our parents. Now, I'm saying it humorously, and I'm saying it again. I don't mean like you have to go blame them. I also don't mean not to do that if that's helpful for you. But blaming our parents is a way of acknowledging I do have a real impact in my system, and I want to deal with it. So one of the ways that I do that is when I have a memory come back to me, and I'm going to share the story now about how I recently processed an intense memory that came back to me. So the story itself is, it's a little bit intense. I warn you, content warning in advance. It's about when I was like 7 years old or something, and it's about when I was. It's not sexual in any way, but it's about not having my consent and autonomy and sense of space while I was in the shower respected. So if you don't want to hear that story, like mute for the next maybe minute and a half and then come back. Content warnings are so important. I think they're so important. I know there's a lot of people that dismiss them. I think they're so important. So anyways, when I was like 7 or something, no, let me tell how this came about. So first, a little while back, I was watching some video or something. No, I was watching a TV show. That's what it was. I was watching a TV show, and something in the show that was happening to the people in the show, it reminded me exactly of something that happened to me when I was a kid, when I was like 7, 8, 9. And so what happened was I was in the shower. Hang on, changing positions again. By the way, anybody who's just joined, my back is very sore, and so I'm shifting positions. All right, so I'm watching TV, and this show activated this old memory. I was in the shower as a youngster, and all of a sudden, the door bursts open, and my dad comes in with 2 or 3 uncles. Uncles, they weren't actual uncles. In India, every adult male is your uncle, and so none of these people were related to me except my dad. But anyways, the 4 of them burst into the bathroom, and I screamed. I said, "Get out! I'm in here. I'm showering." And my dad goes, "Don't worry about it. It's all men. It's all men. It's all men. It's all men." Now, at 7, I had no idea what that meant. It sounded like, well, all I knew was my feelings were completely invalid. My privacy was worthless. My requests had no impact. And all these big people that had all this power could just control me. And I hid in the shower in the corner like that, and I was like probably hiding myself. I can remember the fear and the shame and the embarrassment and everything, like just completely. And all this memory just like came back to me. It was not the first time, but like I hadn't thought of it in a few years. Just came back to me, and the flood of feelings of little Vivek just went through my nervous system. And I was completely activated. I had to pause the show. I couldn't even go on. And again, I was going to repress it. I was going to move on. And I was like, no, you have to process this, Vivek. You have to process this. So what I did was, and this is what I want to share with you. This is one of the things that I do. And there's a couple of different versions. I'm going to share them with you. So what I did was I closed my eyes and I imagined the scene. And then as my adult self now, I popped myself in that bathroom and I held my hands out and I said, all of you need to leave now. Get out now. Did you not hear this human being ask for their privacy? You get out now. And I started shoving them in my mind, in my imagination. I started shoving them out the door. Out, 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 out. I'm older now than they were then, right? So out, 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 out. And I slammed the door and I said, you out. And I turned to little Vivek and I said, little Vivek, I'm laughing now, but I wasn't laughing at the time. I was really in it. And I was protecting this young one, and I turned around, I said, little Vivek, can I come over there? And yes. And I sat down and said, are you okay? He said, yes. I said, you're completely safe now. And I'm going to stand outside the door and no one's coming in. And you have every right to your privacy. And you're going to be completely safe. And I went outside and I stood outside the door and I crossed my arms and I waited for him to call me in. Now, of course, it's my imagination, so it didn't take any time. So that's the first thing that I did. Now then, what I did was, now here's the other part of it. Then I played the whole scene again as if I was little Vivek, right? This is the practice. So you play it a second time as if you are little Vivek. Well, not little Vivek, little you. But for me, it's little Vivek. So when I played it out again as if I was little Vivek, and I had that fear come in, but then all of a sudden, I come in. Right? And as little Vivek, I know I can trust adult Vivek because I've been doing that work. So adult Vivek comes in and I'm like, oh. And then I try to imagine what would it be like to be able to relax and feel safe in that moment? Because actually with the adults in my life then, I didn't feel safe very often. So then I don't know what that would feel like. My nervous system doesn't know. I mean, maybe a little more now after 30 years of practice, but still I don't know. My nervous system is that rat's nest still, I was just telling my kid on the ride, I'm in Montreal right now. By the way, I'm doing this in a hotel. I'm on a family vacation. My kid just said, hey, I'm going to Montreal for this, that, and the other thing. Would you like to come? And so my wife and I are here with my kid and her partner, who I mentioned that I did the workshop with earlier. And we're having the most wonderful time being together. And I hope that when your kid is 25, they also invite you to go away for the weekend. And not go away for the weekend to get away from you, which is more common. Or move across the country and visit once a year. I really hope that's not what happens to you. And one of the main reasons that doing this inner work, which translates, what I'm going to talk at the very end about some of the ways that it translates into the outer work with our kids. But one of the reasons to do this inner work is because it really helps us in creating that long-term relationship with our kids. Anyway, so then I went in as little Vivek and I tried to feel. Can I relax? Okay, even now telling the story, my shoulders are tense. Watch. See that little drop there? Can I feel safe? Even now I'm struggling a little bit with it because I actually haven't done it since then. Another thing to do, by the way, is to do this again a few times. And I neglected that for myself. I'm glad I'm doing it a little bit now. I'm doing it a little bit live in front of you, right? So then I try to relax. What is it like to relax and to feel safe? To feel safe so that I don't have to worry about anyone coming in because my adult self is there protecting the door and I know I can relax. It took a little while for me to feel that and then I felt it. Oh, and it feels so good. So first I jumped in and I protected, right? And made the situation safe. And then I went and empathized and connected, and then I left the room safe, and then I went into the child and I received the empathy, I received the safety, and then I let that sink into my nervous system. So I'm doing both of those things, right? Really powerful to do that. The other day I was telling my friend Tanya Williams, who is one of my closest, oldest friends, and also one of my deepest thinking partner friends. I have a few friends that were thinking partners, thinking and learning partners, and she belongs to a conscious learning community in Kitchener, Ontario, started by her and Jean Robertson, who are also a incredibly profound person that I've learned a lot from. Mostly through Tanya. But her and I were talking the other day, and she told me of a similar situation And this is and that she did, and she used the same process, but she did it a little differently. And this is another part of the process that I want to share with you. And she helped me see that this was something to also include in it. And then I've been doing that. And so what she did was, she was talking about when she was bullied as a kid. And she did almost the same thing, where she used the same process, where she went in, she protected her young self, she empathized with them, but then she turned to the kids that were bullies, because in this case they were kids, and she said, let's gather in a circle and have a talking circle. And because she is like very wise, and she does work with youth and everything now as an adult self, so her adult self took those same kids and had a talking circle, and they all shared, and they talked about empathy, and they connected, and everybody felt healed, right? And came together. Now, I'll tell you, I've done this in real life with kids a lot, because I volunteered and I've worked with kids in many different capacities for decades, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids over the years. And, every time I have been in a situation where some kind of bullying or ostracization is going on, and I do this kind of work with kids, it always shifts the whole system. And even in my kids' grade, where I was always volunteering all the way from kindergarten to grade 8, there was almost zero bullying in that grade. The grade above it, the grade below it, normal amount of bullying. Our grade, almost no bullying. I've written about that a few times on my Facebook page. Which is why I say go read my Facebook page. Honestly, I would love you to just go and just read all the articles, and if I do say so myself. And but it's one of the things. So, but Tanya did this in her mind. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that with those men that my dad and those uncles that burst into the room. So the other thing that we can do is we can bring our wisdom to protect. Both cases it was the empathizing and caring for the kid. But sometimes you need to protect, sometimes you can do the other. Sometimes it's first one, then the other, right? First you need to protect first so the kid can feel safe. Then you can gather everyone and say, hey, let's work this out together. And then you can like have each person like have an epiphany and then open up to your child self and let them feel safe and feel acknowledged. And apologize. I'm sorry I did that to you. I should have respected your feelings. Now, yes, this is not a micro practice, I admit. This is a slightly longer one, right? This is one that I have kind of developed through my own experience and my own work and healing myself and working at healing myself. I don't want to act like I'm healed, but working at healing myself and sharing with others. So when we do this work with actually going inside, replaying the thing, being the protector, empathizing with the pain, creating safety, then feeling as the child the safety, the empathy, and really letting that sink into our system. And like I said before, you may not believe it the first time. That's why you need to practice. These are all practices. This is, it's a powerful thing. So you can use that kind of process on yourself. When something like that comes up for you, it can be a really powerful tool if you can take some time to do that. You can, of course, do some writing around it and other things like that. I'm going to talk about other ways of processing as well, but this specific visualization I find is so helpful. And when I'm doing it, it's not only pictures. Like I try and really be in there and feel the feelings in my body too. It's very visceral. And visceral is the other thing I want to talk about. So I want to talk about the physical aspect now. Reaching for my water. So, now, this is where I want to return back to the physical and talk about it a little bit. So our bodies store the residue, right? Our bodies store residue. And I can't remember the name of the author, but there's this famous book that everyone's talking about. The body keeps the score, or keeps score, and it's like the scientific exploration of that. But I mean, like I've kind of known that since I was a teen, right? And especially in my 20s when I started to untangle the rat's nest, started to work at untangling the rat's nest. I can feel that the physical component is so important, and we often ignore our physical bodies. It's actually in a lot of ways, for a lot of young people, it's a survival mechanism to tune out their bodies. This is why I did the body, gratitude, and love meditation yesterday. One person said they cried through the whole meditation yesterday because tuning into the body was such an alien experience, a strange experience. And so
working with our body and changing our relationship with our body is really important. And part of it is the emotions that come to us when when we're going through our lives. They have that physical component. So we want to work through them. So important. So here's a few different ways that can happen. One is when you have a feeling or a memory come up, or maybe your kid yells at you and you get activated or something like that, and you want to work through it. Or if it's whether you're with other people or alone or whatever, but you feel the feeling come up. You want to process it, but at the same time, try and feel, where do you feel it in your body? Let's say shame comes to you, right? And so, because like my workshop on processing mistakes is called Maximum Change, Minimum Shame, right? Recovering from a parenting mistake with maximum change and minimum shame. Now I say maximum, minimum because it's never perfect, but we want to maximize the growth. We want to minimize the shame, right? So when you feel the shame, one thing. I always say first thing, but this is not really ordered. But where do you feel it in your body? Are you feeling it here? Feeling it maybe in your solar plexus? For me, a lot of my stuff is in my solar plexus. A lot of my feelings come into my neck and shoulders, depending on where. My lower back is clearly an area for me because it has a lot of, I store a lot of tension there. But I have also my butterflies. When I was saying, when I was driving up here earlier, I was telling my kid that I often have butterflies in my stomach. Almost always have some kind of butterflies in my stomach. But sometimes they're kind of chilling, and sometimes they're butterflies with teeth and they're on fire, and and so that's a really powerful thing to be able to be aware of our bodies, right? So because I feel the feeling. I'm holding my stomach just now. I feel the feeling. So where do you feel it? And it might not just be one place, right? Really start to practice tuning in and feeling where you feel different things in your body. And when your kid comes up to you with a joy, a smile on their face, and throws their arms around you, where do you feel that in your body? When they yell at you and tell you they hate you, which honestly is one of the most common things I hear from parents. It's so common. The reason I say it's common is it's not about you. It's part of how kids process things and manage their feelings. And we can work through it. This is why I shared that eye roll thing. But when that happens, where do you feel it in your body? And then if you have a little bit of space, you can do micro, right? Just feel it. Okay, it's in my stomach. And then you go on because you're so busy, right? The micro practices are so important because you're not ignoring. It's almost like putting a pin in it for later, right? But then when you have a little bit of time, you can really feel, where do I feel it? And then you can touch that part of your body, and then you work with it. So then maybe you breathe into it. Breath is so important. So maybe you breathe into it. I'm going to breathe into my butterflies right now. I'm buttering up my butterflies. And so then you can breathe into it. You can even hear my voices change just from taking 2 breaths, right? Breathe into the butterflies, or whatever, or the shame, or the anger, or whatever it is, the fear, the embarrassment, feeling of, like a lot of parents will coerce their kids because they're instinctually afraid of the judgment of other people when they're in public. Breathe into that. Feel, where am I feeling that in my body? My kid is screaming on the floor in the grocery store. People are giving me the dirty looks everywhere. So where am I feeling that in my body? Right? Instead of immediately grabbing your kid and dragging them out the store, telling them they better not cry, if you're activated and you feel that's about to come on from the pressure of all the people looking at you, take a moment and go. Now, if you already are centered, jump in and immediately empathize and hold space for your kid. But if you feel that you're about to go the opposite direction, take that moment. It's better to take that moment and then to yell. And where do I feel it in my body? Oh my gosh, the anger is boiling up in my upper back and shoulders. And my face wants to go. I can feel it, right? Okay, I can feel it. And just being able to be aware of it can help shift that. But when we have a little bit more time, you want to feel it and breathe into it. Feel that sense. Then also touch is really, really powerful. Massage it. Work it out. I often am massaging my solar plexus like that. And I recently read an article I wrote last year about how I often am rubbing my stomach, and people will say, "Oh, Vivek, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just giving my stomach some love. I'm giving the butterfly some love." I'm often rubbing my stomach. And now my friends that know me well, they'll say, "Oh, no, Vivek's just giving himself some love." I love it when they do that. I like having that as a reputation. Let me tell you that. Better than the reputation I had at other points in my life. And but also, you can move with that feeling, right? So like because maybe you're not a mover, but if you have some movement in you, and even if you're not, you can try this. Push yourself a little out of your comfort zone. Just feel that. Breathe into it. Feel it. And where does it want you to move? Maybe you can let that feeling make you move, and you do some kind of. I'm not going to do it because it's going to hurt my back. I'm not going to demo. But you can let it move you, and maybe it's going to tell you stand up and stretch everything out because you need to be big in this moment. Maybe it wants you to crawl onto a little ball. Maybe you break out into spontaneous interpretive dance. There can be all sorts of things that this feeling, if you let it guide your movement, it can express through movement. Then your whole body is expressing this feeling and moving, and then the tears can come or the laughter can come. And this release can be powerful. And it can just help so much with the residue reduction. Releases the residue, avoids it sinking into your nervous system. It's a powerful thing. So notice where it is, breathe into it, add some touch. You can also add some talk to that feeling. You can talk directly to those body parts. That's what we were doing in the meditation yesterday. We were talking directly to our body parts, But you can talk to the body part and the feeling in there. Yeah, and and then after you have a chance to slow down, calm down a little bit, you're a little bit more centered, you can ask it, what message do you have for me? What's available for me to learn here? Yesterday in the meditation, we asked that question of our bodies, and my lower back, I asked my lower back. I was going to do something else, but my consciousness was like, Vivek, do your lower back. Come on, man, And my lower back was like, Vivek, you're rushing, you're pushing, you're judging. And you're not, and I thought the lower back helps with bending over. You're not bending enough. You're not being flexible enough, in your life. And so then I was saying, don't push, don't rush, be willing to bend. Don't push, don't rush, be willing to bend. And I really felt this beautiful wisdom come from my body by asking my body. Once I tuned in and I breathed into it, and I really felt it. I didn't do the movement as much because it's hurting, right? But I really felt it, and then this wisdom came, and we have so much deep wisdom inside of us. When I'm working with kids, my main interest is helping them find their deep wisdom, not telling them what to do. This is why recently I posted, and I know it's a bit controversial, but I posted a meme that says, please don't modify your children's behavior using consequences, not imposed consequences, not not logical consequences, and not natural consequences. It doesn't mean natural consequences don't exist. I'm saying please don't modify your children's behavior using the natural consequences, because that's not helping. It's not helping them find a deep relationship with their emotions. Let's use the natural consequence to help them find a deep relationship with their emotions, yes, but not to modify their behavior. There's a big difference between those things. How we relate, because when we stop thinking of them as natural consequences, that word, it hurts my brain. We just think it's just life. Every moment is a natural consequence, I'm talking and my throat is tired. That's a natural consequence. I have a thought and I choose to have it come out of my words, and then it lands on you. That's a natural, life is just all natural consequences. We can stop calling it that. It's life. But when we frame it as I'm going to use natural consequences to teach my kid a lesson, then it just the whole thing sucks, and kids don't really enjoy that. Now, if your kids are enjoying the process, absolutely it's fine. If they're really loving it, they dig it, it brings them joy. If the way I'm about to post, I'm writing an article about discipline, and I talk a lot about reframing discipline, and I say when I discipline a kid, first of all, they feel better about themselves. They feel more trust in me and connection with me, and they learn something. If you don't have all three of those things, it ain't discipline, right? It's just controlling. But real discipline of like a trusted guide. You can't trust a guide that uses pain, even subtly, even the nuance of pain, to control you. Trust degrades, right? So same with ourselves. All right, let me go on. So the next thing is when we have an emotional experience. Like maybe your kid makes you really mad. You go off to the other room before you yell at them, and you want to process this. or a memory comes up or something like that, and you're really activated. So the first thing is like releasing that activated energy. Now, there's a micro and a macro version of this, and I want to share both. The macro, but both of them are kind of the same, but just different capacity that we do it in, different amounts that we do it in, intensities. So first of all, when we have this buildup of energy emotional energy come onto us, we need to release it. There's different ways to release it, physical ways to release it. So one that I used to use, in my less elegant days, which I highly recommend, is I call it run. So whenever I notice I was about to yell at my kid, I would run. And sometimes I would even yell at myself, run! And I would run into the bedroom, shut the door, and I would scream into my pillow, or I would pound on the pillow like this, and I would get that energy out, because it's a physical buildup. It needs to be released, or it gets repressed, or it gets projected inappropriately in a way that causes damage, right? I don't want the repression. I don't want the inappropriate projection. So I'm going to work at releasing it in a way that is really helpful. So we want to, give me a second. So we want to release the stored energy. We don't want to be holding that. We don't want to be holding that stored energy in, because, like I said, it has that effect. So first release. So you can scream and punch the pillow. I have a punching bag in my bedroom now. I got it at the thrift store, and it's apartment-sized punching bag. I love it. But you can have something like that, But also, like I mentioned before, talking about moving the body, you can move the body through dance and through movement. But other ways are like shaking. Like you can, and again, I'm sorry I can't demonstrate much, but like I said, I have a hurt back. But you can do shaking. Let your whole body shake, head to toe, everything shake. You can start with just the hands, and then the arms, and then the shoulders, and then the head. I'm going to stop there, because any lower it's going to hurt the back. And then the whole body shaking. Jumping can be something. Impact can be something. I do this with kids when I do one of the workshops I do with kids is called Leadership Through Movement, where we do a movement exercise, and then I ask them, what do you think this means about leadership? And I might feed a few things, but mostly I'm mining the wisdom of the kids, and they share with each other, and then I amplify whatever they say, and it's really powerful. But the warm-up, the first part of the warm-up, I get them to do this. I'm like, okay, I go like slap your arms, and then slap your head, and then slap your chest, and then slap your belly, and then I always go slap your butt, and they all break up laughing. And I say, and now slap your, and then we do rubbing, and then we do tapping, to ourselves, right? And so those kind of things, because this really activates the nerves, right? I do that. I got that from my dance work. And actual running, like if you're into jogging or something like that. Me, dancing is one of my big things. I love to dance. I come alive when I dance. And so one of the ways for me to release stored energy is with dancing. But sounding is another thing. Sounding, let out big sounds, I want to caution us not to do this in a way that scares our kids and makes them feel unsafe. So if your kids are around, you might sing the ABC song, or you might sing something, I'm going to date myself when I say this, but you might sing a song from Barney. I know it's not Barney anymore. It's like, I don't know who else, Bluey and Peppa Pig. I don't know who's out there right now. My kid's 25, so I'm not watching those shows anymore. But I did my time. Let me tell you, we watched, to be honest, we still watch them sometimes because we love those shows. Whenever they come on, we're like, ooh, Little Bear's on, let's watch. And so Little Bear was so sweet. Did you ever watch Little Bear? You should look up Little Bear, so sweet. Well, actually, I don't know if it's sweet now if I would watch it, but in any case, So the physical release is so important, letting it out and sounding. So if you think your kid's going to be scared by it, you don't want to yell while your kid's there. Just sing something really loud, but let it out. And if it's a song that they love, they're going to just think you're being silly, right? But better if you can be if you have some opportunity to be in a space and you can just let out a sound, is it a yell? Is it a scream? Is it just a tone? Is it chanting? Maybe you like chanting. Something that can really help release. So then, once you've released the stored energy, at that point, you also want to come back to center. You want to recenter your nervous system, right? That's really important. So that's when we do the calming. Now, if you do the calming before the releasing, it ends up kind of being repressing. This is why I'm very cautious with teaching kids breathing techniques. Yes, you want to help them learn to calm down. Yes. The blowing out the candles, that kind of thing. Or I saw a thing, pretend you're a choo-choo train, chugga chugga, something like that. I see all these things making it fun for kids. I just want us to not do that because we're uncomfortable with their emotions, because then we're going to help them become uncomfortable with their own emotions. I'm not saying that stuff isn't a good thing. I'm going to actually talk about it just now. But it has its place in the process. And it's not at the beginning. Because then it's the repression, right? And then the residue. And then the layers. And then the projection comes out. And then you're wondering, why is my kid yelling at me? Why are they swearing at me? Why won't they listen to anything I say? And the nervous system gets wired for that pretty quick. So we want to, when we encourage our kids to consistently repress, we're setting ourselves up for a lot of crap. But when we can help them release, and then recenter. So for us, same. We have that release, then we want to recenter. So recentering can be some deep breathing. I know I was just dissing the breathing, but I'm not really. I just want it to be handled well. But the part of the recentering is breath. Breath is a very physical thing. When we breathe, chemical changes are happening. Physical changes. The body, the lungs expand. The organs get pushed. It affects the heart, and the lungs, of course, expand. Then all this work is happening to take in that air and turn it into what it needs to be turned in. And it's not a biology lesson. Somebody can probably explain it better to you, but it's a lot of physical stuff happening, And even just the feeling of the air is physical, the air going in the nostrils and going in, and you can feel it. It's very physical, right? And so breathing can be something that really helps. And then what else? What else helps you recenter? This is a beautiful thing for you to know about yourself. It's not the same for everybody. For me, meditation is a big one, right? Maybe you're into yoga and stretching. Sometimes what I do is I will just feel my body, and I'll feel my feet on the ground and feel my connection to the earth. And I'll take one breath into the earth. And then I'll feel myself rise up and feel the sky. One of the meditations that I do with parents is visualizing yourself as a tree. And we do in different sections. First you're the trunk, then the roots going into the earth, then the branches going up into the sky, and we connect to the sky, and we connect to the earth, and we feel ourselves in between, connected to the whole system. It's a beautiful meditation. Hold on, gotta sit up. Oh! If you've just joined us, I'm grunting and groaning because I hurt my back a couple of days ago. And I need to shift every now and then. Oh, well, I need to shift every day. Emotionally, personally, my self-development, but for this, I think. So anyways, so then I feel myself grounded. I feel myself connected to the sky. And I feel that connection, my connection to nature. If you're a nature person, do your nature thing. What really works for you? Is it maybe after you had the big release, you need to open your favorite book. Maybe it's that. Maybe you need to get out some sensory equipment for yourself that you need to really get your senses, and it helps rebalance yourself, right? Maybe I saw this graphic of this kid who had taken like all their toys and made this whole path through the whole house with them. Maybe you need to do something creative and constructive like that. Like for me, drawing is a beautiful thing. I love to draw, and so drawing can be something. Maybe you want to play some music and put some calming music on. What really helps you? This is where we have a chance to really start to learn to know ourselves, and maybe you don't even know. Maybe you don't know, and that's okay. It's okay that you don't know. You deserve to know. So take some time to learn that about yourself. Investigate it. Go into it and say, well, what do I feel might help me, and try something. And then maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, and you're learning, right? Learning about yourself, always learning about yourself. And then what you can do is you create a wellness plan. And again, Han, who I've done did that workshop with, who also, by the way, just gave a talk on Wednesday at an organization that she also works with and volunteers with, called jack.org, which is a beautiful Canadian organization for youth mental health. I was so touched listening to that organization, to the talk the other day, because all the volunteers and all the people that work for that organization, you could tell how much they care about young people. So anyways, Right, wellness plan. So I actually learned about the wellness plan from Hannah, where you think about what can really help you, like what works for you when you're in a situation. It's great to help your kids develop a wellness plan also, and so have an idea what really helps you, what helps you recenter, what's your method of releasing the emotions, what's your method of centering yourself after that, to coming back to center. Maybe it's reaching out to friends. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's reaching out for support. All these things are so important. We want to have a good plan for ourselves so that as we know ourselves. And I know it sounds kind of, I won't say it sounds, but maybe it sounds like it's kind of regimented or overly planned. But honestly, if you've spent a life not really knowing yourself, it might take some work and effort to find out what really works for you, And most kids aren't taught that. We aren't taught to really know ourselves deeply. This is why I always used to say the 3 things I want for my kid are that they know. By the way, this is how I count to 3 when I'm working with kids. I go, the 3 things I want for my kid, I want them to know themselves and love themselves and honor themselves. And I always do this and the kids laugh. And so a well-placed swear word can get you on kids' side so quick. But to know themselves, self-knowledge, right? And then to love themselves, the feeling that we have. Like, I tell you, the scripts that I have that go through my head, the self-talk, it's brutal sometimes, And to know themselves, love themselves, and to honor themselves, honor their autonomy and consent, the way they do things, honor their feelings, honor themselves in relationship, all that kind of stuff. And so when we ourselves don't have that, it's really challenging, right? All right, so that's physical, right? The wellness plan is not only about the physical. Each of these you can create a wellness plan for and include each of these in it, each of these components. The next one is that I want to talk about is the intellectual, the mental, the conceptual, right? Maybe that's a better way of saying it, conceptual. Yes, I like that, conceptual. Do I have a pen here? No. Okay, never mind. I'm going to forget that. Can somebody who knows me just message me the word conceptual so I'll remember, because I want to change intellectual to conceptual. I like that better. It's more, I've always tried to learn and develop my own understanding of things, but it's less judgmental. I think intellectual has a whole bunch of judgment around it, and mental, I don't love the word, but I love conceptual. So conceptual. When I'm working with my feelings, I don't want to jump into conceptual right away because I'm pulling myself out of the emotional. First, I do that other stuff. But then, when I think about it, when I want to learn from it, and learn from it conceptually, because I'm learning physically too, and I'm learning feeling-wise too, but when I want to learn from it conceptually, because learning happens on multiple dimensions, what I do is I want to think about a few different things. First of all, if I notice I'm shaming myself, then I want to think of the context of what's happening. What's the context? The context is that I'm overwhelmed and under-resourced, right? And then I also want to think, and my kid is completely dysregulated, and I'm dysregulated. So the fact that I yelled, the fact that I'm angry, the fact that I yelled and that I got angry, it's not entirely a mystery, right? Once I think about it, right? I think of the context of how the thing happened. Then I think of my history and how I got, and maybe my kid's history, my history, and why I am like now, and why I might have had that reaction, and why I am having these feelings, Why do I have constant fear of everyone in my life rejecting me all the time? I say the wrong thing, they're going to reject me, Like I posted that thing on my Instagram about don't use natural consequences to modify your kid's behavior. And I know that's a little bit radical because we're always hearing about don't use imposed consequences, use natural consequences instead. And I'm like, if you're using natural consequences, even in slightly similar way that you would have used imposed consequences, it's still the same damn thing. And so I didn't word it like that. I worded it a little bit more gently, but not much. And I had somebody that was maybe a little bit, they didn't really like that, or they were questioning it. And I felt maybe it was a little bit harsh the way I don't want to say harsh, but it was a little hard the way they worded it, and it really affected me. And it's somebody I care about, somebody I consider a close, a good friend, and I went. I mean, They were just having their own reaction. It's a ridiculously controversial thing that I posted. I knew that. I knew I was setting myself up to receive those reactions. I knew it. I want to be clear about this. It's not that I didn't know it. It's not that it was a surprise. This is the thing. We often say, oh, but you knew it was coming. Why did you react that way? No, that's not how emotions work. And that's only looking at the conceptual. If you have the conceptual clear, that means the emotions won't happen. No. And this person's reaction, it really hit me. I was so afraid. Oh, does that mean they're going to reject me? They're not going to want to be my friend anymore. They're not going to want to respect me anymore because they disagreed with me. And then I had to think of my history that led to that fear. The rejection history, the history of rejection, abandonment, and betrayal in my life. It's a long string of those things, and that has led me to have this wired into my nervous system fear that I'm going to be rejected. So I think about my history, right? I also want to think about psychology and how the mind works and how the mind-body connection is and understanding that whole thing. Because the more understanding that I have, the more I can apply that understanding to my situation and to working with my kids. I also want to understand my values and principles. And you know what I'm going to do? My back. I'm going to just briefly, So this here is the list of, can you see it? The list here. I'm doing that so that when you watch the video, you can screenshot that list, the intellectual, even though I'm changing it to conceptual. So the next one is values and principles, right? I want to know what are my values? And this is what I was talking about earlier. Are my values imposed or are they chose? Have I chose these values? If you have some prejudice, did you really choose it? Were you completely non-prejudiced? You chose it if you were completely non-prejudiced around this, and then you thought about it and said, I think I'm going to choose to be prejudiced around it. And then it's chose. But if it's just automatic, then I'm betting that prejudice was imposed. So it's not yours, buddy. I'm talking to you, whoever, I'm talking to all the people I argue with on the internet. But is it chosen or imposed? So I want to know my values. And I want to think about my values and feel them in my conscience, in my deep relationship with myself. And then the conceptual is asking the self-reflective questions. I call them the self-reflective questions. Who am I? Who do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? Who do I want to be in relationship? What are my values is one of the self-reflective questions. What kind of impact do I want to have in my relationships? What kind of impact do I want to have on other people? What kind of impact do I want to have on the world? What do I believe about how humans should treat each other? So my own values and principles are also how I understand how things work, which relates to understanding psychology. It's if I know that empathy first, relationship first, empathy first is one of my principles, I can't punish and control. I can't, because I have empathy first and I have relationship first. That's my principle, right? So you want to understand and clearly understand for yourself your values and your principles. Just because you believe something doesn't mean it wasn't imposed. So take a moment and kind of what I did when I started this chose versus imposed process decades ago, because it takes a while to unwind, and I'm still unwinding. Just changing intellectual to conceptual, I noticed that there was some chose versus imposed there because I got a deeper understanding in that moment, It's always possible for us to be on that learning mindset. So then after values and principles is to question our own thoughts, which is a beautiful thing to do. This is also part of chose and impose, when I started doing that, I just kind of assumed all of my thoughts, all of my values, all of my principles, all of my perceptions, all of my opinions, all of them were imposed. I assumed it. And it wasn't far from the truth. And it's probably not far from the truth for you too. And I don't mean that as an insult, because I'm including myself in that. And I'm not insulting myself. It's kind of the way that we're raised, I was so fanatical about not imposing on my kid when I was raising her because I could feel the impose versus chose in me so strongly. So one of my this is another reason that I said that thing about natural consequences is we can use them subtly to do some imposing, right? Like if they don't wear a jacket and then they're cold, you say, see, you should have worn a jacket. But maybe not. Maybe they have a ton of reasons. Anyway, I'm writing an article about that. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to write an article about that because I want to explain it a little more. It was a little bit irresponsible for me to post something so controversial without an explanation. I accept that. I kind of did it on purpose because I was feeling so emotional about this particular topic at the time and I just wanted to get it out there. But anyways, so questioning our thoughts. If I have a thought that comes to me, my kid is being obstinate. Are they? Why did you think that, Vivek? What does that mean to you? I wonder why you feel that way, you know? This is rude. Is it? Maybe it's rude. Maybe it's only rude on the surface. Maybe something deep is happening that I can tune into. I'm questioning, you know? But my own thoughts, I'm a bad person. Am I? Or like, you know, I have a number of friends who apologize for themselves all the time. So if I have the urge to apologize, do I need to apologize for this? Am I apologizing for me being who I am? I mean, if I'm apologizing for my impact on someone, yeah, that makes sense. But am I apologizing for being who I am? You know, I don't want to do, especially something that maybe is part of who I am, you know. But we're wired with those things. So questioning our thoughts is really powerful. And it's not the only thing, right? None of these things are the only thing, you know. If you have a complex situation requires complex work. A complex problem requires a complex solution. And so that's why it's important to understand these different things. So another thing is doing conceptual processing, journaling, asking yourself questions, talking with friends. Processing with friends can be so helpful. Like I talked about my friend Tanya, the two of us are processing friends. And of course, my wife and I do a lot of processing together. My kid and I do a lot of processing together. You know, it's part of our natural relationship. We've been doing that processing since she was born, literally since she was born. From the moment she popped out, we were processing together, I tell you. And, you know, when she popped out, before anything else happened, I shooed all the doctors away and I went right to her and I held her and looked right into her eyes. And staring right into her eyes, I just said, for like a whole minute, I just said, I love you, 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 I love you. And I just poured I'm a lot freer with my love now than I was 25 years ago, but back then I gave every ounce of my love in that moment. And then immediately we gave baby to mom and we went on. But that was her first experience. But when she looked back into my eyes, I could hear in my head, she said to me, Dad, if you treat me like most parents treat their kids, I'm going to hate you when I'm a teenager. And I went, noted. So right from the beginning, we were processing with each other, you know, emotional, physical, conceptual. And so journaling, talking, and self-talk. I do this all the time. I am always talking to myself, having discussions with myself, or arguing with an imaginary person, or processing with an imaginary person. And I will often do it like it's out loud, as if I'm walking around and I'm shaking my fists and I'm like and sometimes my wife will come out and go, are you on the phone? I'm like, nope, I'm just talking to myself. Like, oh, okay. So the self-talk is really profound. And it's one of the ways that we can form a relationship with ourselves, right? And then another part of the conceptual work is, by the way, I am going to go long. Stay as long as you can. Come back and watch later if you can't. But I want to finish through this. But I am closing in. I'm closing in. So then, this is why I can't make 30-second videos. Not that I can't, but I haven't. I can, of course I can. That's why I can. I mean, I love one-liners. You know, I love creating like my one of my favorite one-liners that I've written is, kids are not acting out, they're reaching out. Gorgeous. Very soon I'm gonna have a whole bunch of merch that I'm releasing with my one-liners, because I have a bunch of one-liners. But the reason I generally haven't been doing short videos is because I just have so much to say. So anyways, let me go on. So research is the next conceptual one. So like, if you don't understand how things about anger, or how brain development works, or how child development works, get into merch. Excellent. I'm excited about the merch. Get into some research. Google is your friend, right? Type in, what happens to the body when someone gets angry? Type in, what are development stages for kids? Type in, how can I be more empathetic? Like, when you want to understand something more, do some research about that, you know, and find out. And then take something that resonates with, oh, that idea resonates with me. Yeah, research. Okay. So then I want to talk about consciousness. I say consciousness because that's something that we all have, right? I also call it spiritual. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a relationship to the divine. Maybe it's a relationship to a god or goddess. Maybe it's a relationship to your own inner spirit, you might call it. Or maybe it's got nothing to do with anything non-material, and it's your relationship to your deep consciousness, your deep subconscious. It's what I call pre-label consciousness. And why? I didn't make that up. I'm sure I didn't make that up, but I call it pre-label consciousness. And pre-label consciousness is when we're first born, and we, like I said, we pop out. We don't have labels for things. We don't have all the differentiations and compartmentalizations that, I mean, I'm 53. I have a lot of labels and I have a lot of compartmentalizations now. But I didn't when I was first born, right? And so my pre-label consciousness it's not a blank slate. I mean, when my kid was born, I felt their whole personality there, right? When I'm with babies, I see their whole personality, but pre-label is quieter. It's less divided. It's less judgmental. It's got less pain in it. Not no pain necessarily, but it's a much more it's a deeper part of ourselves, right? Pre-label consciousness. I also call it the changing self and the unchanging self, to understand a little bit more of the difference. Now, of course, everything is integrated and related and connected. There's not always, and rarely are there really hard boundaries between things. You know, even my two hands coming together, it seems like there's a hard boundary between the two, but actually, it's not really true, because my hand is made up of atoms, and the outer shell of atoms is just electrons. So what's really happening is you have electrons interacting with electrons, mostly empty space, repelling each other through electrical forces. It's not a hard boundary necessarily, you know, it's an electrical boundary, but there's so much stuff that we can't see that's happening underneath the surface here. And that's one of the powerful things about anyways, let me go. Changing self. And sometimes what I do is I start talking about one thing and I can go on about that thing for the next hour. So that's one of the reasons I love having my notes, because it brings me back to the flow of what I'm talking about. The changing self is the personality. The changing self is when we learn about stuff and our opinions and the stuff that gets imposed. Like I said, are your opinions imposed or chose, right? And so that's all the changing personality, the changing consciousness, which is a beautiful part of who we are. You know, my changing consciousness, I write poetry and I do math and I make love and I dance. It's like I can do all these things because of my changing consciousness, you know, but my unchanging consciousness is also always there. That's when I was talking about the foundation, right? When I had the foundation, the emotional foundation, and then the peaks and valleys going around it. And so the same thing here, my unchanging consciousness. When I was 3, it was the same me looking out of these eyes, hearing with these ears, and perceiving the world as I am now at 53. It's the same me. But everything else has changed. There's not a single atom in my body that was there when I was 3, because it replaces itself many times. The arrangement is kind of there, but, you know, my opinions have changed. My understanding of the world has changed. So many things have changed. But that essential me-ness, the pre-label me-ness, is just me. So the more that we develop our relationship with the unchanging consciousness, with the pre-label consciousness, the unchanging self, the more we're able to access the calm in the storm, which is one of the most beautiful things to be able to do with our kids. Calm doesn't mean we have to be calm on the outside, because sometimes kids need us to join them in their exuberance of their feelings. And if there's a lot of anger, you need to be big with that. Oh, you're so angry. I'm so sorry this is happening. I'm here to help. You might need to be big in it. But inside, you can find that stillness, right? And it's a beautiful thing to be able to do this and then choose the reaction that feels the most appropriate to help the kid and yourself connect and all that. But that's hard to do when we are lost in ourselves. So mindfulness can be really helpful. And this is why I spend so much time talking about whether it's spiritual or not, whether it's material or spiritual or whatever, or just consciousness arising. If it's just arising out of the arrangement of our atoms through evolution, or it's a gift from the divine, whatever it is, our consciousness is there. So we might as well work with it, right? However you frame it, it's still there, and it pretty much operates the way it operates. So mindfulness is really beautiful. Mindfulness and meditation are really beautiful. Very often, I teach a micro meditation. It's one of my favorite things, and I do it all the time. One of my favorite things to do is take a one breath meditation. Why don't we all do this together? So the micro meditation is where any moment throughout the day, it doesn't only have to be when you're feeling stressed, any moment throughout the day. Actually, when you're not feeling stressed, it's lovely to do it. But also when you're feeling stressed, is a one breath meditation. You breathe in and you hold it for a moment, then you breathe out and you hold it for a moment. Now the holdings are important, not vital, but they're important because here's the thing: when it's a slightly different kind of moment in your brain, because when in your consciousness, because when I'm breathing, you can see when I'm breathing, there's movement happening, but when I'm holding, there's no movement, right? There's no movement. And then when I breathe out, movement is happening. But then when I hold it out, there's no movement. And there's a different kind of quiet that happens in the mind in the in-between parts. So let's do a micro meditation together, okay? I'll lead. So let's take a deep breath in together and hold and exhale and hold. And then breathe normally. One breath meditation. Powerful thing to do throughout the day. Mindfulness, there's so much. I'm not going to give a course on mindfulness right now because you just Google it and you'll get 10 million articles on mindfulness. Go to YouTube, you'll get 10 million videos on mindfulness. In both my podcast and on my YouTube channel, there's a few meditations that I've done. Plus the one I did yesterday, I'm going to be posting very soon. So you can try and find my guided meditations. I also have I think there's 13 guided meditations I've done specifically for parents that I'm going to package at some point and sell as a package, audio guided meditations. But of course I have to do it, and I haven't done it because I'm usually too busy creating new stuff to go and make products of any of my old stuff. I really need to do that. Anyway, but mindfulness is great. And another thing is self-observation. When we learn to observe ourselves, that's kind of when we're practicing operating from pre-label consciousness. So I have a practice. One of the meditations I do is we practice for an hour doing that, self-observing, but there's also the micro self-observation. This is another practice that you can do. Micro self-observation, which of course in the micro practices workshop I go into more detail about, and we actually do the whole meditation. We do a 20-minute version, but still we do the whole meditation. But micro self-observation is where suddenly you just imagine that you're kind of floating above, and you're just watching the scene, right? And so I'm going to do that right now. So right now I'm talking, and now I'm going to watch myself talking. I'm observing. I'm doing it right now. I'm watching myself talking. I can see. Now I've noticed my hand doing this because I'm watching it. Right? I wasn't watching that before. Like, whoa, look, like your hand's doing this funny thing while you're talking. And now I can't stop doing it. And I'm going to stop because I don't really want to watch myself all the time. It's a little awkward. But and I'm still doing it. But I call it popping out. Right? You can also do that you can learn to do that also kind of inside as well by finding that objective, quiet, pre-label viewpoint. So working with our consciousness this way and practicing both micro-meditations, mindfulness, self-observation, and whatever other mindfulness things that you work with can have a super profound effect. So we talked about working with empathy and the feelings. We talked about processing through the visualizations and bringing feelings into that, and with the kids and protecting the kids and making them feel safe. We talked about a bunch of physical ways to work with our feelings and emotions and processing. And now we talked about the conceptual ways, which is looking at the context and the history and all that stuff. And then we also talked about consciousness or spiritual and mindfulness. So I want to talk. I kept a separate section specifically to talk about fear and anger a little bit, which I relate very close to each other. Oops. Which I relate very close to each other, fear and anger. So I want to talk a little bit about fear and anger. You know what I just noticed when I turn this way, there's like a little echo, and then when I turn this way, there's no echo. That's cool. And I like noticing little things like that and playing, and for sure, after this workshop, when my kid comes back, I'm going to tell her about that, because it's so fun to share those kind of things with the people you're close to, little things like that. And this is part of my parenting practice too, is noticing and enjoying and playing with things like that. I know I'm kind of deviating, but noticing and playing. I did a whole 2-hour workshop at one point, all on how to increase your capacity to play and to notice little moments and find play and joy in them, and then share that with our kids. Those are micro things, right? But you fill a day with those little things, it transforms your relationship with your kids in ways that you can't even begin to process right now, let me tell you. And but let's talk about fear and anger. So first of all, I want to say I love my anger and I love my fear. I wrote an article on my Facebook page a while back called "Your Anger is Beautiful," and I would love you to read that article. And I keep saying that you can go to my Facebook page, Meaningful Ideas. It's Meaningful Ideas, and you can go there and you can just use the search bar and you can find these articles. And if you just search empathy, you'll find all my empathy articles and videos. If you search anger, you'll find everywhere I talked about anger. It's really helpful information. But one of the things about anger and fear is they have profound messages in for us. They're part of our humanity. They're part of our warning system that there's something to pay attention to. They are not bad things. My fear is fantastic. My anger is wonderful. I love both of those things. I just don't want them to harm other people, and I don't want them to hold me back from my potential. But it doesn't mean that I do that by repressing them and judging them and pushing them away, right? Now, if you've had anger projected at you, especially in your formative years, it might feel super unsafe, super unsafe. So part of the process of reclaiming ourselves is reclaiming our own relationship with our anger, to be able to see it as beautiful, to be able to see it as something that is giving us an indication that there's something. When I feel anger, I immediately know I have something. Better not ignore it, Vivek. This is something for you to pay attention to. So there's information, and they're valid feelings. When we start to think of them that way, then we can have a whole different working relationship with them. Because at the same time, like I said, we don't want to project them, especially onto our kids, not onto ourselves, not onto our partners, not onto our friends, right? We don't want to project. But sometimes it comes up to protect us. Sometimes it's an old survival strategy. All sorts of things can come up, right? Fear and anger are powerful. And so one of my one-liners is, you can feel the feelings without operating from them. You don't have to repress. And it's what I call the impossible balance. And the impossible balance applies to all sorts of things. It applies to, honoring our kids' autonomy while keeping them safe. It applies to feeling my feelings without projecting them. It applies to honoring myself while also caring about my impact on other people. Like, we can never be perfectly balanced in any of those things. Balancing my relationship with my body and my mind and my consciousness and my emotions. I'm always working out those balance, and we'll never get it perfect. That's why I call it the impossible balance. It's a fun way of giving myself some compassion for the fact that it is going to take a long time to do it. I've probably got another half hour. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep persevering. The impossible balance, right? So in this case, it's being able to feel my anger and fear, to let it pass through my system so I don't have the residue reduction, but also not project it on my kids, and also learn the lesson. Like, the whole workshop should just be about that. And actually, I have done a workshop just on that in my membership space, which, by the way, if you want to work with me more personally, if you feel like you're ready for like a radical leap into non-coercion collaboration with your kids, and when working with me is kind of radical because I push. I'm still pushing myself, so we all push each other together. It's a great community. We have a beautiful group of people that are really working really hard to embrace this mindset and work with our kids in a non-coercive, collaborative manner. I have done a whole workshop in there on anger, and because I really want us to, fear and anger, very related, because I really want us to have working relationships with these things rather than being afraid of them or pushing them away or feeling controlled by them. So one of the things is to acknowledge those feelings, and really hold space for them, and really empathize to ourselves with them. Really, really deep acceptance. It's okay that you're angry. It's okay that you're afraid. It's reasonable given the situation. Just saying that to yourself can help not project so much. You just say it's, Let's say your kid takes your phone, whips it across the room, turns to you and calls you an idiot. Now, why do I come up with these reactions? It seems, these examples, it seems extreme. They're not extreme. Because I heard these things hundreds of times. This is kids. We think it's extreme because we forget what it's like to be a kid, or maybe we weren't like that, or maybe we were punished so much for it that we stopped doing those things. But these are natural things that kids do. And so maybe that happens to you and all this stuff comes up, right? All this stuff comes up. Fear and the anger comes up. You can say it yourself, this kid just threw my phone and now they're screaming at me. Of course I'd be angry and afraid. Of course. Anger. I sometimes just go anger. I feel it. And then I'm like, the breath, shake it off. Hey, kiddo, right? I'll run if I have to. But acknowledging and empathizing. Now, one of my favorite acronyms is ACBOD. And this is another thing that I've learned from my mentor, Tulsi Sen, that I talked about before. And ACBOD stands for anger caused by obstructed desire. A lot of the time, when our desires, our goals, our feelings of how things should be going is obstructed, anger comes to us, And so that's ACBOD, anger caused by obstructed desire. And when we can realize that there's some deep need at play here, there's a real loss at play here, there's a real obstacle we're dealing with, these are real feelings and needs happening. And if my I think I'm not going to edit out any of those. Usually I'll edit out those things. I think I'm just going to leave the backache in this video later on. But all right, ACBOD. So what I do often is I will talk to my anger, right? I acknowledge the ACBOD, and the parents that I work with, a lot of them will quote ACBOD all the time. Oh, I was ACBOD, Vivek. I was ACBOD. I was like, I hear you, friend. I hear you. Me too. And so then what I do is I'll say, I respect you, anger. You have a place, and I really care about you, and I want to work with you. I'm just going to ask you to step aside right now because I'm talking to my vulnerable child and I don't want you projecting on them. But I'm not criticizing you. We have work to do and I'm with you. But please, not with my kid. Please. Let's work together to support the kid rather than you give me the information and I'll translate it into... This is why principles are important, right? So I understand that the anger is valid, but not to project on the kid. So that's ACBOD. The next one is... I'm talking to our inner child. Now, self-talk is so important, right? And so I have a video. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because I have a video on my YouTube page called How to Talk to Your Inner Child. Meaningful Ideas. Please go find it. And it's a fantastic video. I think it's only like 12 minutes long, maybe 20. And I go into detail about how I talk to my inner child and how to think about it and how to work it and how to practice it and the micro and the macro and all that stuff. But our inner talk is so much of because so much of our fear and anger and pain and all the activations are from our inner child stuff. So then when we learn to talk to our inner child more directly on a regular basis, I have a very close relationship with little Vivek, and we talk all the time. And the more that we do that, the more we're able to work with the rat's nest, with the wild and complex system that we are. Because what we're doing is we want to update our survival mechanisms. This is another one of my lines: is update your survival mechanism. Your survival mechanisms, when you were a kid, were come by honestly. You needed them. They kept you safe. Safer than you would have been otherwise, helped you survive. But now that you're an adult, they're not working so well for you because they were learned haphazardly, they were last-ditch efforts to survive, and we're stuck with them. Not stuck, but they're stuck in us. That's what I really mean. So updating our survival mechanisms means we pay attention to our values, we pay attention to our principles and how the way we know things work. And then we think, well, what are more effective, more aligned survival strategies, and survival mechanisms? And we're not ignoring, we're evolving. And part of that is talking to the inner child. You don't have to respond that anyway. You're safe with me now. You don't have to respond that way anymore, kiddo. I've got you. It's okay. It's okay. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe. Beautiful, beautiful. I love doing that for myself. And I still have to do it. I still have. I told you just a few days ago I had that experience with where I got all activated. It's a lifelong process, but the more we get into it, the better. And then also I often will bring my inner child awareness into me when I'm talking to somebody. So when they're interacting with me, I feel the impact on me, but I also feel the impact on little Vivek at the time. We're often together at in the moment. I mean, you can bring your inner child into the interaction in the moment. You have so much more capacity to manage the situation because it's not unconsciously hitting the inner child. You're together, and that's why I often say when I'm interacting with a child, I'm actually interacting with two children: my child inside and the physical child outside of me. And when I'm interacting with an adult, I recognize that I'm talking adult to adult, but I'm also talking to their inner child. And they're also talking to my inner child. So there's multiple relationships. There's me adult to that adult, me adult to that child, that adult to me adult, and that adult to my inner child. It's a complex system. This is one of the reasons that human communication is so complex and so difficult a lot of the time. So please, I want to encourage you to work at shifting your relationship with your anger and your pain, your anger and your fear, and your pain, everything really, right? But work at shifting it to a point where you can learn to have a working relationship based in real understanding. And you can use some of the things that I shared here, but again, this is a place you can do some research also. How can I work with my anger without repression and without judgment? And I'm going to look up my ACBOD video. It's in my membership group, and maybe I'll release that too, because that's a really powerful one, and it'd be nice to go into that. So fear and anger. Now, I want to talk about self-compassion. Self-compassion is probably for me the thing I talk about the most with the parents that I work with. I talk a lot about how to talk to your kids and work with the kids and collaborate with the kids and all that. But, the self-compassion work is what allows us to do that when things are challenging. And this is something I really, really want to stress. That's why I gave a whole section just to self-compassion. And of course, I have talked a lot about it, but it's like a broken record. I'm not going to stop talking about it because it's so important, I think of self-compassion as almost like a discipline, like exercise or medicine. I don't think of it as a wishy-washy, namby-pamby woo thing to do, something you do just because you're soft or you're nice or you're whatever. I actually take it very seriously, and because I know that there's rewiring happening when I'm doing that. It's not just being nice to myself. I'm rewiring, I'm shifting patterns, shifting my relationship to myself and to others. So, another thing that I learned from my mentor is that I use all the time is setting an alarm. I set an alarm, and one of my favorite things, so this is something that that came to me a few years ago, is I will actually record myself saying something beautiful and kind, and then I'll set it as my alarm, and I'll set it as my alarm, and once an hour I'm saying beautiful things to myself. Like recently I set an alarm that said, because I noticed one thing that I do is I justify myself a lot, and so I've set an alarm saying, Vivek, you don't have to justify yourself. You don't have to justify yourself. You've gone through a lot. You know what you know. You're on a learning path. You really care. You try and help people. You don't have to always justify yourself. And I set that as my alarm. And for a little while, once an hour, that alarm would go off, and I would just listen. I would stop whatever I was doing, and I would listen. Okay, I don't have to justify. I'm not wrong. I'm not going to fill myself with wrongness. I don't have to justify. Okay, and then I go on. So, you can give yourself targeted messages with an alarm. What is really hitting you, right? You can use your own voice. Sometimes I'll say something like, "You are a good person with a loving heart. You care deeply. I believe in you. I know life can be challenging sometimes. You have the courage to keep going even when things are hard. And your feelings are valid. You have a loving heart, and I love you." And if you want, you can even use that sound. You can extract that sound and use it as an alarm for yourself if you want to, because some people have trouble doing it with their own voice. Another thing about self-compassion that I want to share is feck. I like bringing some humor into these things because humorous things can really help us, Feck, I say go feck yourself or feck you. Or sometimes I say feck me. And feck stands for forgiveness, empathy, compassion, and kindness. And I'm talking a lot about feck these days because I love it. I want to feck myself all the time. I want to feck myself every day. I want to feck myself in every room of the house. And I want to feck myself in public. I want to feck all the time. Forgiveness, empathy, compassion, and kindness. Can we practice that? Shame stops us from learning and growing. It's different than remorse where we might feel bad about hurting someone. That's okay. That's natural. That's human. Actually, I think it's beautiful. When I would feel remorse, my line for myself was, let it burn, Vivek. Let it burn. Let it burn away all the obstructions. Let it burn a hole all the way to your love and compassion. Is it different than shame? Shame doesn't burn towards love and compassion. It burns towards pain and fear and disconnection. But remorse, which is devoid of shame, is the sense of our shared humanity, and I'm contributed to someone else feeling hurt. I know there's this whole thing you're responsible for your own feelings, you can't ever make anyone else. That's not true. We're all interconnected. We're deeply connected. There aren't, like I talked about the electrons, we're not entirely separate. I think about my family, and I think about families as what I call an integrated, holistic ecosystem. And I got the word ecosystem from my friend Tanya I talked about before. But then I added integrated and holistic. Integrated means all the parts of the ecosystem are connected to all the other parts. Holistic because it includes my mental, physical, emotional, relational, environmental, and consciousness or spiritual. Consciousness, I explained that. I have to go again why I say consciousness or spiritual. So then, when I feel that sense of my shared humanity, and something that I did impacted someone and hurt them, I love the fact that hurts me. I love the fact that I feel remorse about that. And I let that remorse burn, and it burns me towards my self-compassion. It burns me towards my compassion for others and myself. That's a beautiful burning. But shame stops the learning. It stops the growth, and it takes me away from that, right? So self-compassion combats shame. And this is another area where we can watch our self-talk, right? When you have the scripts come to you, the non-compassionate, harsh scripts, you can say, I am not my script. You are not your script. You are not. You are, their scripts are part of you, but they are not you, You can work through your scripts. You can see them as scripts and you can work through them. You can say, I don't believe you, And remember, I'm saying this from the context of also having spent a lot of time about accepting and feeling our emotions and feeling our physical and working with our physical self and not repressing. So this is not bypassing. If you do this kind of thing without that other stuff supporting it, it can be avoiding, repressing, bypassing. But sometimes my script comes up saying, Vivek, you're a failure. No, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Even if the only thing I ever do in my life is I have a good relationship with my kid, I'm not a failure. Right? Even if the only thing I do in my life is I work at being a better person, I'm not a failure. Even if I make mistakes every day, you're not a failure. But I'm going to talk myself through that, I'm going to say feck you. Right? So watch the scripts and then identify the voices. I often, like my mom, I often say, when you said that, it sounded just like your mother when she talks harshly about herself, And so identify the voices. By the way, I have permission to say those kind of things with my mom. She loves when I share our stories, and I don't usually share stories about other people without their consent, especially family. So, so identify the voices that are speaking. Like when I hear that failure voice, I know a few of the teachers that said that. I know it was my dad. My dad's famous joke was, like, even if I got 97% on a test, my dad would always say, what happened to the other 3%? That was his joke. He thought he was joking, but every time it hurt. Every single time as a little one. And I felt like I could never measure up, right? So like, whose voice is it? It's not your voice. Your voice is going to speak compassion and love, because you are compassion and love, my dear. You are. Those other voices aren't you. They're in you. They're wired into you. But you are compassion and love. So you can talk yourself through that, right? And then you can go back and do the physical, and you can do the emotional empathy, you can do the visualization, you can do the mindfulness stuff, you can do you can do all that work with it, right? But identifying those voices. So please do watch that inner child video, and that's a powerful thing. All right. Now, just for a moment, I want to talk about the benefits to parenting, and then we're going to conclude. So when we do residue reduction, and I want you to really get that phrase, residue reduction, because it's something that can really encourage you to keep doing this work and to do it consistently. Because I call it gentle consistency, where we're consistent, but not with a lot of pressure, because the pressure pushes us away. We don't do it, right? You want to run from the pressure. But gentle consistency, you just do a little every day, do it in a way that feels good, keep working on it, knowing that you're doing it as a gift to yourself. So as you do that work, oh geez, my phone's about to run out of power. Where am I at? 16. Okay, I'm okay for a few more minutes. So sometimes the workshop ends just because I run out of battery on my phone. So benefits to parenting. What are some of the benefits to parenting? And this is something I was talking with my mentor, again with Mr. Sen a while back. And he was saying, Vivek, these are some of the benefits I really see to parenting for doing the emotional work that you're going to be teaching in your workshop. So I was like, yes, tell me. So the first one, and I talked about this earlier, is an increase in our capacity to have patience. Tongue biting is one of the primary tools of parenting, in my opinion. One of my sayings is I only have 7% of my tongue left, because the reactions come out, and I want to stop it. So the tongue biting is a powerful one, and then when we have that more self-compassion, and we're working on the layers of our pain and our fear and our reactions, and we start the healing, and we do the self-compassion and all the stuff that I've just spent 2.5 hours talking about. When we do that work, bit by bit, as the residue reduction happens, our capacity to have patience in chaotic moments increases. And when we do that, all of a sudden, the second point is that we become a more safe place for our kids. And one of the most important things as parents is that we're a safe place. You know, we're the safest place for them, that they know that they can come to us with anything. Telling them they can come to us with anything, but then acting in ways that make them feel unsafe doesn't work, right? Then it's just the words. But we want the whole relationship environment and the whole their experience of us to be that feeling of safety. And as we work through our own stuff, then we're able to be more and more of a safe place for them. I was much less safe for my kid when she was 5 than now that she's 25, because I've evolved over 20 years, you know. And see, I did that little math correction in my head there. 25 years. No, wait, that was only 20 years, because I said when she was 5. And it's funny how the mind works. I only stop in it and talk about that because the mind is funny. By the way, you'll notice I haven't stopped talking for 2.5 hours, and I could probably go on for another 2.5 hours. I'm planning an event called Stay Awake with Vivek. My name came up. My wife came up with the name Stay Awake with Vivek, where I'm going to go live for 24 hours. And my plan is to have guests on, and to do some fundraising with it, and to talk about a whole bunch of subjects, give a whole bunch of different workshops, and to have a bunch of guests at the same time. Maybe even to do some live coaching or something like that. It's going to be fun. 24 hours live straight, minus bathroom breaks. And so being a safe place is important. That way we can respond instead of with a grimace or tension, or irritability, right? We want to reduce our irritability. If we can, eventually throw it away, defensiveness and irritability, right? So that we can come from a deep place. But the irritability also comes from a deep place, so we don't want to judge ourselves for it. It comes from our past, it comes from, whatever. The overwhelm, like I said, and overwhelmed and under-resourced. But that also sabotages our relationship. So we want to work through that, right? We want to be a more safe place. We want to be able to respond with a kind smile or an open heart to our kids, even when their behavior is challenging, so that they learn that they can, number one, they're modeled that kind of way to relate. So they can treat themselves that way and others. And I just had a parent tell me that one of their kids spilled water on the floor. And remembering one of the stories I had told, got on the floor and started playing with the water and invited the kid to come play. And they were splashing and they were making designs, no wrongness, no fear. And then they just cleaned it up together. It was just so natural. It was such a beautiful connecting moment. And then, like a week later, this kid's sibling spilt water on the floor. No, actually, the kid had a glass of water, and the sibling came and knocked it out of their hands, spilt it on the floor. And instead of getting upset like they normally would, this memory came to them, and they say, "Hey, sibling," I'm avoiding gendering and using names. "Hey, sibling, come. Why don't we play in the water together?" And the sibling came over, and they played in the water together, and suddenly there was this connection between them. This is like a 6-year-old, right? There's a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. This connection came between them and this joy, and they hugged. And then the little one left and didn't clean up, and then the parent came over and the two of them cleaned up together. And it was this beautiful whole transformation. And the parent was like, wow, the modeling was the way to see that modeling take effect, right? But also they've been working really hard for a few years now to transform their parenting, so they already have a lot of the layers built. So when we're a safe place, it changes a whole lot of things about us. Now, the last point about this that I want to talk about is having faith in the goodness of our child. That a lot of the time, when our kids act in a certain way, and we have memories from our own childhood and the stuff wired into our nervous system, we can judge them and think that they're bad and they're wrong and they're rude and they're problematic and they're mean and they're cruel. None of these things is happening. Disrespectful is another one. What's happening is they are struggling to manage their own feelings and the situations, and they're learning about themselves and they're learning about relationships, and that's really challenging and it takes time, and they need a wise, loving, patient guide. And so when their behavior is communication. That's what we hear all the time. And in my saying, kids are not acting out, they're reaching out. And then they're disturbed, they're disturbed by the conditions of life. It's how it is. And so when we can as we do this work, we have much more patience. We're much more of a safe place for our kids. And it's easier for us to really have faith in the goodness of our kids, because we're learning to have faith in our own goodness, And I don't mean good as in good or bad. I mean good as in we usually think of as bad, but we can see more that when I was saying to you, your compassion and love, even when you yell at your kids, underneath that, the layers that cause you to yell, you are compassion and love, right? And when we see that in our kids, that's why I say, when our kids deserve it the least, and when we feel like giving it the least, when our kids seem to deserve it the least, and when we feel like giving it the least, is when they most need our love and compassion. That's not the exact line. I'll have to look it up. Yeah. And then you can do work with the affirmation. Okay. So that's it. That's what I want to share with you, everyone. That's pretty much everything. I'm going to go into the conclusion now. Thank you so much for listening to me. Let's do a little recap, shall we? So, processing is important to do residue reduction, because when the residue sits in us, we project it onto our kids and our other relationships and ourselves. Emotions are complex. They come from many complex causes. Self-compassion. Where is this? Here. Here we go. Working with our feelings, we want to work with empathy, using the really holding space for our feelings, not judging our feelings. Working with post and pre-event empathy, PP, which we're not calling it. Blaming your parents, meaning really giving a lot of support to your inner child and not avoiding the impact that your childhood had on you, so you can work through it. And then doing some of that visualization, inner child visualization that I shared with you, that process. Work with that is so beautiful. Again, all these things might feel awkward at first, but don't give up. And then there's the physical aspect, working through the physical things in all the ways that I shared, movement and breathing and stuff. There's the conceptual, where we think about context and history and our principles. And then there's the consciousness, which is mindfulness and meditation and that kind of stuff. Working with your fear and your anger and akbod, really holding space for your feelings. and then working with self-compassion, right? I spent 3 hours talking about just that. I just summed it up all in a minute. And working with that stuff. One of the things that I love to do is mirror work, and I want to share this one tool with you. Mirror work is where I look into a mirror, and I look right into my eyes, and I give myself a lot of love. And my mom's elevator in her apartment building has a mirror, so I always use the ride from the first to the 20th floor to give a lot of love to myself. But I have a mirror next to me on the couch where I sit and do all my work, and I regularly look into that mirror and say, "You're doing okay, Vivek. You're a good guy," or whatever I say, and so do some mirror work. Try that, see how that feels with you. And another thing is, as you're working through your stuff, get your kids involved. Let them know you're in process and you're learning stuff and you're growing and you're shifting and you're changing, and you want to let them know that you're trying to do this work, and they can help you, and maybe you can make signs together, and maybe they can remind you of your affirmations. Like my daughter, every time I move, my daughter says, "Slow down, Dad. Slow down." She reminds me all the time, "Slow down." I stop myself. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we're trying to create new patterns, right? Well, a workshop that I did a while back was radical self-compassion allows us to break old cycles and create new patterns. And so a lot of what we're doing is breaking old cycles and creating new patterns. And this is a powerful thing, right? So bringing the kids into that experience can make the whole thing a family joyous thing, and they can help us with that. Not that we make them responsible for it, but in a way that helps them feel like they have some agency in it, right? So that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with me. Remember to notice your feelings, to notice your mindset, to watch yourself talk, to check in with your body, to check in with your feelings, to give yourself empathy. Remember that stuff. And please follow me on social media. Follow me on Meaningful Ideas everywhere, on Facebook, Meaningful Ideas, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Meaningful Ideas. Yeah, and I love you, and I care about you, and I care about your families, and I just want to see all of you like deep in your relationship with yourselves and with your kids, and that's why I love to do this kind of work. And well, I'm really glad to the No Spank Challenge for putting this on, to Amy Brandt of Wild Child Counseling and Parenting Beyond Punishment and StopSpanking.org. And I just want to say, I just love, part of being in this industry, I get to meet so many wonderful people, so many of the colleagues that I work with. Follow a bunch of peaceful parenting pages. And of course, everything that you read, including my stuff, without exception, everything that you read, put it through the filter of non-coercion. Is this subtle coercion or not? Or is this real honoring, and for yourself and your kid. All right, that's it, everybody. Peace out. This recording is going to be here forever. So please watch this again, or share it with other people, and that's it.